The door clicks shut, but the noise of the day follows you inside. It echoes in the quiet of the room, a phantom ringing of deadlines, expectations, and conversations that felt like running in place. There is a weight in your shoulders, a familiar tightness in your chest, the residue of a world that asks for everything and offers little space to simply be. You sink into a chair, and the silence you craved now feels empty, vast. Your hand, almost by itself, reaches for the phone. The screen glows, a portal to 1,000 other lives that seem brighter, easier, more complete. A curated feed of successes and joys that somehow deepens the sense of your own lack. It is a quiet hum beneath the surface of modern life. This feeling of being adrift, of running a race with no finish line. A constant, low-grade anxiety. A spiritual hunger that no purchase, no promotion, no number of likes can ever truly satisfy. We are told to seek peace in the next vacation, the next relationship, the next achievement, but that peace is always a fleeting visitor. It evaporates like morning mist, leaving us once again with that same inner deficit, that same feeling of being fundamentally unsettled. But what if the search has been pointed in the wrong direction? What if peace is not a destination to be found, but a quality to be cultivated? What if it is not something to be acquired from the outside world, but a warmth that can be generated from within? There is an ancient path, a quiet technology of the heart that addresses this very feeling. It comes to us from the teachings of the Buddha, captured in a single, gentle word from the Pali language. The word is metta. It is often translated as loving kindness, but this is not the sentimental, conditional love of songs and movies. It is not pity, nor is it a transaction where we give in order to receive. Metta is something far more radical and far more simple. It is a sincere, unconditional, and boundless wish for well-being. A silent, steady intention for safety, for health, and for happiness. And this journey, this cultivation of an unshakable inner friendship, begins with the most overlooked person in your life, yourself. To truly begin this journey, we must first hold a single word up to the light, metta. When we translate it into English as loving kindness, we are given a beautiful, but perhaps incomplete, map. The English words are soft, gentle, and can sometimes be mistaken for something passive, even fragile. They bring to mind politeness, a gentle smile, a simple absence of malice. But the Pali word, metta, carries within it a resonance that is far more active, more intentional, and more profound. It is not merely the absence of ill will. Metta is the active generation of goodwill. It is a fundamental, positive orientation of the heart towards all of existence. Imagine the sun. The sun does not choose who or what to shine upon. It does not offer its warmth only to the beautiful flowers and withhold it from the weeds. It does not shine brighter on the wealthy and ignore the poor. It simply radiates. It gives its warmth freely, universally, and without condition. Metta is this inner sun. It is the conscious cultivation of a radiant, unconditional friendliness, a warmth that we can learn to generate from within, regardless of the weather outside or the storms that may rage in our lives. It is a declaration, a deep and quiet intention that we send out from the core of our being. To understand metta more deeply, it is essential to distinguish it from the ideas we often confuse it with, especially the Western concept of love. The love we see in our movies and hear in our songs is very often a transactional and exclusive force. It is a love based on preference, on attraction, on shared history, on what another person provides for us. It says, "I love you because you are my child, because you are my partner, because you make me feel good, because you are beautiful or smart or funny." This love, while beautiful in its own right, creates boundaries. It creates an inner circle of those we love, and by default, an outer circle of everyone else we are indifferent or even hostile towards. This love can be a source of great joy, but also a source of great suffering because it is conditional. When the conditions change, when the person no longer makes us feel good or acts in a way we disapprove of, this love can curdle into disappointment, resentment, or hatred. Metta, however, is radically different. Metta says not "I love you because," but simply, "May you be happy." It is a wish that is not dependent on the other person's qualities or their relationship to us. It is an offering, not a demand. It does not require that we like everyone. It does not ask us to approve of everyone's actions. It simply asks that we hold a fundamental wish for their well-being, for their freedom from suffering. You can wish for the well-being of the difficult boss, the frustrating politician, or the stranger who cut you off in traffic without liking them or condoning their behavior. It is a release of the poison of ill will from your own heart, for your own sake. It is also vital to distinguish metta from its close cousin, compassion or karuna. They are two of the four faces of a fully awakened heart, but they have different functions. Compassion, karuna, arises when we are confronted with the suffering of another. It is the heart's trembling in the face of pain, and it carries the specific wish, "May you be free from this suffering." It is a responsive emotion, a deep empathy that moves us to act to alleviate pain. Metta is the foundation upon which true compassion can stand. Metta is the proactive wish for happiness and well-being that we cultivate at all times, for all beings, whether they are currently suffering or not. If compassion is the emergency medic who rushes to the scene of an accident, Metta is the public health worker who labors tirelessly to create the conditions for wellness and to prevent accidents from ever happening. Without the strength and stability of metta, constant exposure to the world's suffering can lead to what is called compassion, fatigue, or empathic distress. We become overwhelmed, burned out, and shut down. But a heart fortified by metta, by a boundless and stable goodwill, can engage with suffering without being destroyed by it. It can offer compassion from a place of strength and resilience, not from a place of depletion. This points to the most empowering aspect of metta. It is not a passive feeling we must wait for, but a skill we can actively develop. It is a form of mental training, a deliberate cultivation. In this, it is much like training a muscle at the gym. When you first begin to lift a weight, the muscle is weak, the movement feels awkward and unnatural. You may not see results after 1 or 2 sessions, but with consistent, patient practice, the muscle grows stronger. The movement becomes more natural, more integrated, until what was once difficult becomes effortless. So it is with metta. At first, sitting down and reciting the phrases, "May I be happy, may I be well," might feel mechanical, even fraudulent. The inner critic might scream that you don't deserve it, or that the words are meaningless. This is the initial resistance. This is the weak muscle protesting. The practice is not to force a feeling of happiness, but to simply, gently, and persistently repeat the intention. It is the act of choosing, again and again, to orient the mind towards kindness, instead of its habitual patterns of criticism, worry, or anger. We are carving a new neural pathway, a new channel for the river of our thoughts to flow. With time and repetition, this new channel deepens. The warmth that felt so distant begins to flicker to life. The intention becomes a genuine feeling. The practice becomes a refuge. The ancient stories of the Buddha's life often illustrate metta not as a gentle sentiment, but as a formidable power. In one teaching, the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha instructs a group of monks who are being harassed in a forest by unhappy spirits. He does not give them a weapon or a magic incantation for protection. He gives them the practice of metta. He instructs them to radiate unconditional goodwill in all directions, to all beings, seen and unseen. As the monks saturate the forest with their kindness, the very atmosphere changes. The hostile spirits, touched by this profound and unexpected friendliness, are pacified. They cease their harassment and become the monk's protectors. The teaching is clear. The ultimate protection is not an outer shield, but an inner state of boundless love. The most dramatic of these stories is that of Nalagiri, the elephant. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, plots to have him killed. He gets the keepers to intoxicate a notoriously fierce bull elephant named Nalagiri and release him on the narrow lane where the Buddha is walking. The city descends into chaos. People scream and flee, climbing onto rooftops to watch the impending disaster. The elephant, enraged and drunk, thunders down the lane, its eyes red with fury. Its target, the calm, saffron-robed figure walking peacefully towards it. The Buddha's disciples urge him to run, to save himself. But the Buddha does not move. He does not raise a weapon or a hand in defense. He simply stands his ground, and from his heart, he projects a powerful, concentrated wave of metta directly at the charging animal. It is a force field of pure, unconditional goodwill. The chronicles say that as the elephant entered this field of kindness, its rage began to melt away. The intoxicating fury was washed clean by an overwhelming feeling of safety and peace. The elephant slowed its charge, stopped, and walked gently towards the Buddha, kneeling down and allowing the Buddha to stroke its head. This story is not about animal training. It is a profound metaphor for the power of metta. It teaches us that even the most primal, instinctual, and violent rage cannot survive in the presence of a truly boundless, fearless love. It is a force that disarms, that pacifies, that transforms hostility at its very source. Even without taming raging elephants, the initial benefits of starting a metta practice can be felt almost immediately in the landscape of our own minds. The simple act of turning your attention away from the endless loop of anxieties, resentments, and deficiencies, and towards a simple wish for well-being, begins to calm the nervous system. The mind, so often a turbulent sea of thoughts, is given an anchor. It is given a simple, wholesome task. This provides an immediate reduction in stress. It breaks the cycle of rumination that fuels so much of our anxiety. Furthermore, it begins to heal the painful illusion of separation. In a world that encourages us to see ourselves as isolated islands, metta reminds us of our interconnectedness. The practice of wishing well for ourselves, and then for others, dissolves the hard boundaries we draw between me and them, fostering a sense of connection and belonging that is a deep human need. It opens the mind and the heart, creating a spaciousness where we can hold our own experiences and the experiences of others with a greater sense of grace and ease. It is like opening a window in a stuffy, cluttered room, allowing fresh air and sunlight to pour in, cleansing and renewing everything it touches. This is the seed of metta, this wish for well-being. It is a seed of immense potential, containing within it the power to calm our own minds, to pacify the hostility in the world, and to grow a boundless inner strength. Now that we have unpacked this seed and felt its potential, the question arises, where do we plant it first? The soil that is closest, the soil that is most often neglected, is the soil of our own heart. The Buddha's path of kindness always begins at home, within our own being. Having understood that metta is an active, intentional force of goodwill, the very first instruction on this path can feel deeply counterintuitive, even radical, to the modern mind. The Buddha taught that the practice of loving kindness must begin with ourselves. Before we direct this warmth outward, to our family, our friends, or to the wider world, we must first learn to offer it inward. In a culture that often glorifies self-sacrifice and can stigmatize self-care as selfish indulgence, this instruction can feel uncomfortable. We are taught that to be a good person is to put others first, to deplete our own resources for the sake of another, to be a martyr for a cause or a family. We have all heard the airline safety briefing. yet we so rarely apply its wisdom to our emotional and spiritual lives. You must secure your own oxygen mask before assisting others. This is not an act of selfishness. It is a profound act of responsibility. A person gasping for air cannot effectively help the person next to them. A heart starved of kindness cannot genuinely nourish another. To attempt to love others from a place of inner scarcity is to offer them an empty cup. This form of giving is brittle, exhausting, and often quietly transactional, breeding resentment when our sacrifices are not appreciated or reciprocated. The path of Metta invites us to abandon this model of heroic depletion and instead embrace the sustainable, life-affirming wisdom of filling our own vessel first, so that our giving to the world can be a true and effortless overflow from a source that is ever renewing. This idea of toxic selflessness is a subtle poison in our society. It is the belief that our own well-being is a luxury to be attended to only after everyone else's needs are met. This mindset is the fast track to burnout. It creates a dynamic where our acts of kindness, instead of being joyful expressions of a full heart, become heavy obligations. We give with a clenched fist instead of an open hand. When we are running on empty, our patience is thin, our empathy is strained, and our presence feels burdened. True generosity, the kind that uplifts both the giver and the receiver, can only come from a place of abundance. Therefore, learning to direct metta towards ourselves is the most fundamental act of kindness we can perform, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of every single person we will ever interact with. It is the process of building a solid foundation, of becoming a stable and reliable source of warmth and peace. When we are no longer desperately seeking validation, approval, and love from the outside world, we are free to engage with that world from a place of wholeness. We cease to be emotional beggars and instead become quiet beacons. We learn to become our own sanctuary, our own refuge. This is not selfishness. This is the very bedrock of sanity and sustainable compassion. For most of us, the primary obstacle to this practice is a relentless, lifelong companion, the inner critic. This is the voice in our head that keeps a running tally of all our mistakes, our perceived flaws, and our shortcomings. It is the voice that whispers, "You're not good enough. You should have done better. Why can't you be more like them?" It is a master of comparison and a connoisseur of shame. It replays embarrassing moments from a decade ago with perfect clarity and forecasts future failures with grim certainty. The tragic irony is that this inner critic often believes it is helping. It operates under the mistaken assumption that by being harsh and vigilant, it is motivating us to improve and protecting us from the judgment of others. It thinks that if it berates us first, the sting of external criticism will be lessened. But this strategy is a catastrophic failure. Far from motivating us, it paralyzes us. It drains our energy, erodes our self-worth, and makes it nearly impossible to take healthy risks or to bounce back from setbacks. This constant internal berating is the very antithesis of metta. It is a state of perpetual inner conflict, a civil war being waged within our own being. The practice of metta for oneself is the direct antidote to the tyranny of the inner critic. It is important to understand that we are not trying to engage the critic in a battle, to argue with it, or to violently silence it. This would only create more conflict. Instead, we are doing something far more subtle and powerful. We are introducing a new voice, a voice that is warmer, wiser, and infinitely more patient. A voice of unconditional friendliness. When the inner critic screams, "You are a failure," the voice of metta does not argue about the terms of success or failure. It simply and gently offers, "May you be at peace." When the critic dredges up a painful memory, the voice of metta offers, "May you be safe." It is like being in a dark, cold room where someone has been shouting insults for years. Instead of shouting back, we simply walk over and light a candle. We do not fight the darkness, we introduce light. We do not fight the cold, we introduce warmth. The voice of Metta is this candle, this warmth. It holds the fear and pain that fuel the critic's voice with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. It acknowledges the suffering without getting entangled in the storyline. And over time, as the warmth and light of Metta grow stronger, the cold, dark voice of the critic naturally begins to lose its power. It may never disappear entirely, but it no longer occupies the throne of our mind. So, how do we begin to light this candle? The practice itself is one of sublime simplicity. Find a place where you can sit for a few minutes without being disturbed. You can sit on a cushion on the floor or in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. The key is to have a posture that is both relaxed and dignified, your back upright but not stiff. Allow your eyes to gently close. Take a few deep breaths, feeling the air move in and out of your body, allowing yourself to arrive fully in this present moment. You might find it helpful to place a hand over your heart as a physical gesture of warmth and self-compassion. Then, you begin to silently, gently repeat the phrases of Metta, directing them inward. The classic phrases are, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." Let's unpack these wishes. May I be safe is a wish for protection from both inner and outer harm. It is a wish for security, for a feeling of being grounded and protected from the dangers of the world and from the violence of our own self-judgment. May I be healthy is a wish for the well-being of the body and mind, a wish for vitality, strength, and freedom from physical and mental afflictions. May I be happy is a wish for a genuine, authentic happiness that arises from within, a deep contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. And may I live with ease is a beautiful wish to move through the world with less struggle, less resistance, with a sense of grace, flow, and peace in the face of life's inevitable challenges. You repeat these phrases slowly, like a gentle, rhythmic lullaby for your own heart. The most important instruction at this stage is to release any expectation of feeling a certain way. This is the part where many people give up. They say the words and then check in. Am I happy yet? Am I feeling loving kindness? When they feel nothing, or perhaps even irritation or sadness, they conclude that the practice is not working. This is a profound misunderstanding. The practice is not about forcing a feeling. The practice is the gentle, sincere repetition of the intention. The intention is the seed. The feeling is the flower, which will bloom in its own time, under its own conditions. Your only job is to faithfully, patiently water the seed. Some days you will feel a palpable warmth and peace spread through you. Other days you will feel nothing but the dull, mechanical repetition of the words. And some days, offering yourself kindness will feel so foreign that it may even bring up tears of grief for all the years you have spent in self-reproach. All of these experiences are valid. All are part of the path. The goal is to simply continue to hold all of these experiences with the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness. Imagine the sun is always shining. On some days, the sky is clear and you feel its warmth directly. On other days, the sky is thick with clouds. You cannot feel the sun, but you trust that it is still there, shining brightly behind the clouds. The phrases of Metta are your act of trust, your reminder that the warmth of your own basic goodness is always present, even when it is obscured by the clouds of doubt, fear, and self-criticism. There is an old story of a man who heard a legend about a priceless jewel that would bring unending happiness to whoever possessed it. He dedicated his entire life to the search. He traveled across continents, climbed treacherous mountains, crossed vast oceans, and braved dangerous jungles. He grew old, weary, and impoverished in his quest, but he never found the jewel. Finally, defeated and heartbroken, he returned to the small, humble hut where he had been born. As he began to clean the dusty, neglected home of his youth, his hand brushed against a loose stone in the hearth. He pulled it away, and there, nestled in the dirt and grime, was the fabled jewel, shining with an inner light, more brilliant than he had ever imagined. It had been there, in his own home, all along. This is the journey of metta for oneself. We spend so much of our lives seeking happiness, validation, and peace from external sources, searching for that one person, that one job, that one achievement that will finally make us feel whole. The practice of metta is the act of returning home. It is the patient, loving work of sweeping away the dust and cobwebs of self-neglect and criticism to uncover the radiant jewel of our own innate worthiness and capacity for happiness, which has been there, waiting patiently all along. When we begin to tend to our own garden in this way, something remarkable happens. The wellspring, once replenished, begins to overflow. The kindness we cultivate for ourselves naturally seeks to extend outwards. It wants to be shared. And so, our practice gently turns its gaze toward those we already hold dear, the people for whom our hearts open with ease. After learning to turn the gentle light of metta inward to soothe the harsh voice of the inner critic and establish a baseline of self-acceptance, the heart naturally seeks to share its newfound warmth. The journey of loving kindness now moves outward, following the path of least resistance. This next stage of the practice is, in many ways, the most natural and joyful. We are invited to direct our goodwill towards a benefactor, a loved one, or a cherished friend. This could be a parent who has supported us, a partner who shares our life, a child whose laughter brings us joy, a dear friend who has stood by us, or even a beloved pet whose simple presence is a source of comfort and unconditional affection. This step feels easy, almost effortless, because the channels of love and appreciation are already wide open. The positive feelings are readily accessible, a familiar and pleasant territory for the mind to rest in. We are not trying to create a feeling from scratch, but rather to take the love that already exists and consciously amplify it, purify it, and allow it to become a more focused and powerful intention. This stage is like learning to sail in a calm and sheltered harbor. The winds are gentle, the waters are smooth. It is here that we can truly familiarize ourselves with the feeling of a heart overflowing with goodwill, building the strength and confidence we will need when we eventually venture out into the more turbulent waters of our emotional world. The practice itself follows the same simple structure as the cultivation of self-compassion. After settling your mind and body, you bring to mind the image of your chosen person. Do not just think of their name as an abstract concept. Truly evoke their presence. Picture their face, the way they smile, the sound of their voice. Allow the genuine feeling of warmth, gratitude, or affection you have for them to arise naturally in your heart. Let this feeling be the foundation, the fertile ground for your practice. Then, just as you did for yourself, you begin to silently repeat the phrases of metta, now directed towards them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. As you recite these words, you are performing a profound act of love. You are offering them the purest gift you can possibly give, a sincere, heartfelt wish for their ultimate well-being, completely independent of what they can do for you. You are wrapping them in an energy of unconditional care, a silent blessing that can be felt across any distance. This practice allows us to strengthen the muscle of metta, to make the feeling of boundless goodwill a more familiar and accessible state of being, preparing us for the more challenging stages of the path. However, it is precisely because this stage feels so easy and natural that it contains a subtle, yet deeply transformative challenge. The challenge lies in learning to distinguish pure metta from its very close relative, attachment. Most of our love for our family and friends, while sincere, is intertwined with attachment. Attachment is the part of our love that is rooted in our own needs, fears, and identity. It is possessive. It says, my child, my partner, my friend. It carries a subtle sense of ownership. It is the part of us that needs them to be a certain way in order to make us feel secure, proud, or happy. We want our children to succeed in ways that reflect well on us. We want our partners to behave in ways that fulfill our emotional needs. We want our parents to stay healthy so that we do not have to face the fear of losing them. This is not wrong. It is a deeply human part of loving. But this attachment is also the source of a great deal of our suffering in relationships. It is the root of anxiety, jealousy, disappointment, and the pressure we subtly place upon those we claim to love. It is a love that, while warm, can also be confining. It builds a beautiful cage. The practice of metta for a loved one is the key that unlocks this cage. It is a slow and gentle purification of our love, transforming it from conditional attachment into unconditional goodwill. The shift happens in our core intention. Attachment says, I want you to be happy so that I can feel at peace. Metta says, may you be happy for your own sake. May you find your own path to peace, even if it is not the path I would choose for you. As you sit and repeat the phrase, may you be happy, you can gently notice the ways your mind wants to add conditions. May you be happy by getting that job I think you should get. May you be well by following the health advice I gave you. May you be safe by never leaving my side. The practice is to gently let go of these conditions, time and time again. We release our personal agenda for their life and replace it with a simple, boundless wish for their well-being. This is an act of profound generosity and freedom. It is the greatest gift of trust we can offer another human being, the trust that they have their own wisdom, their own path, and their own capacity to find happiness. We are moving from being the nervous director of their life's play to being their most devoted and supportive audience member, cheering for them, no matter what role they choose to play. This leads us directly to the healing of one of the most pervasive poisons in our closest relationships, expectation. Our expectations, even when born from love, can feel like a heavy burden to the people who receive them. They communicate a subtle but constant message. You, as you are right now, are not quite enough. You need to change to meet my ideal. This creates a constant, low-level friction. It forces our loved ones into a position of either conforming to our wishes or rebelling against them, neither of which allows for their authentic self to flourish. When we practice metta, we are consciously training ourselves to love the person as they are, not the idealized version of them that lives in our minds. When your partner is struggling with a mood, instead of wanting them to snap out of it, you silently wish, may you be at peace with what you are feeling. When your child chooses a path that mystifies or worries you, instead of projecting your fear, you silently wish, may you be safe on your journey. May you find your own authentic happiness. This practice does not mean we become passive or neglect our responsibilities. It does not mean we don't offer advice or set healthy boundaries. What it changes is the inner energy from which we act. We begin to act from a place of profound acceptance and support, rather than from a place of fear, control, and wanting. The effect of this inner shift on our relationships can be nothing short of miraculous. When our loved ones feel, on a deep and intuitive level, that they are being held in a space of unconditional acceptance, they are free to blossom. The defensive walls they may have built to protect themselves from our judgment begin to come down. Communication becomes more honest and vulnerable. Conflicts, when they arise, are no longer seen as battles to be won, but as opportunities to understand each other's underlying pain or fear. We learn to listen more deeply because we are no longer listening for what we want to hear, but are simply offering the spacious, healing gift of our peaceful presence. We can celebrate their triumphs with a pure and simple joy, uncolored by any attachment to our own ego, and we can support them through their failures without the sting of personal disappointment, offering them a safe harbor in which to heal. The relationship itself is transformed from a source of potential friction and anxiety into a genuine refuge, a place of deep nourishment and mutual respect for both individuals. The image that traditional Buddhist teachings offer for this kind of love is that of the sun. Think of how the sun operates. It rises in the morning and pours forth its light and warmth upon the entire world. It does not make distinctions. It does not decide that the fragrant rose is more deserving of its light than the common dandelion. It does not judge the tall, straight oak tree as superior to the crooked, gnarled scrub brush. It shines on the saint and the sinner, the rich and the poor, the beautiful and the plain, all with equal and impartial generosity. It does not ask for thanks. It does not demand that the plants grow in a certain way in response to its gift. It simply gives itself, freely and completely. Our ordinary, attached love is often more like a spotlight, intense, focused, but also narrow and exclusive. The practice of metta, beginning with our loved ones, is the process of transforming that tight, narrow spotlight into the broad, radiant, life-giving light of the sun. We are learning to love with that same impartial, unconditional, and boundless warmth. To love those who are easy to love is a beautiful and necessary human instinct. It warms our own heart, strengthens the bonds that give life meaning, and builds the foundation of our metta practice. It is the act of tending to the most beautiful and cherished flowers in our garden and watching them bloom under the gentle care of our attention. But the path of metta, the path of a truly liberated heart, calls us to stretch ourselves further. It invites us to venture beyond the comfortable and familiar garden of our affections. It asks us to cast our gaze upon those we do not know, the neutral faces we pass on the street and in the marketplace, and to begin the radical and world-changing work of breaking down the invisible walls of indifference that separate our heart from theirs. Having established a foundation of kindness for ourselves and allowed it to overflow to those we hold dear, the path of metta now invites us to take a truly courageous leap. It asks us to venture beyond the warm, comfortable circle of our affections and into the vast, anonymous territory of the neutral person. This stage of the practice is where the heart begins its transformation from a personal, exclusive love into a boundless, universal compassion. It is the moment we consciously decide to stop drawing lines between those who matter to us and those who do not. We have tended to the soil of our own being and watered the familiar flowers of our close relationships. Now, we are asked to turn our attention to the countless stones and blades of grass that we step over every day without a second glance, and to recognize that they, too, are worthy of our care. This practice is the crucible in which indifference is melted down and recast into connection, transforming our entire perception of the world we inhabit. Our daily lives are populated by ghosts. They are not spirits in the supernatural sense, but living, breathing human beings whom our minds have rendered invisible. They are the person who prepares our coffee in the morning, the teller at the bank, the driver in the car next to us at a red light, the janitor who quietly cleans our workspace after we have gone home. We see their faces, but we do not truly see them. Our minds, in a constant effort to conserve energy and navigate a complex world, file these people away into functional categories. They become the barista, the cashier, the delivery driver. They cease to be individuals and instead become functions, a means to an end. We feel no particular goodwill towards them, but we also feel no ill will. We feel, for the most part, nothing. This is the vast and chilly realm of indifference, a state we often mistake for being neutral or harmless. We move through our days at the center of a self-created universe, populated by a small, significant cast of main character saw friends and family, and a massive, faceless crowd of extras. But indifference is not a benign state. It is a subtle but potent form of dehumanization, both of the other and of ourselves. It is the fertile soil in which the seeds of prejudice, judgment, and impatience are sown. When the person in front of us is merely a cashier and not a human being, we are far more likely to become irritated when they are slow or make a mistake. We forget that this person may be exhausted from working a second job, worried about a sick child at home, or struggling with their own private grief. Indifference allows us to objectify them, to reduce their entire, complex existence down to the single function they are performing for us in that moment. This act of quiet dehumanization also impoverishes our own lives. It shrinks our world, drawing the circle of our concern ever tighter around our own ego. To live in a state of indifference is to walk through a vibrant, colorful world in shades of gray. It is a profoundly lonely existence, creating invisible walls that isolate us from the rich tapestry of humanity that surrounds us at all times. The practice of extending metta to the neutral person is the conscious act of dismantling these walls, brick by brick. The practice itself is a direct challenge to this habitual state of mind. It begins with an act of deliberate selection. Bring to mind one of these neutral people from your life. Choose someone you see regularly but know nothing about, someone for whom you feel neither positive nor negative emotion. It could be the security guard in your building, a person you see at the gym, or someone who rides the same bus as you each morning. Find a quiet moment to sit, just as you have before. Settle your body and mind, and then bring the image of this person to your awareness. At first, you may notice a sense of blankness, or your mind may resist, asking, "Why this person? What's the point?" Acknowledge this resistance with kindness and gently persist. Hold their face in your mind's eye, and then begin to offer them the same wishes you have offered to yourself and your loved ones. Silently recite the phrases, "May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease." In the beginning, this can feel deeply artificial, perhaps even more so than practicing for yourself. You have no pre-existing emotional connection to draw upon. You are truly creating a channel of goodwill where none existed before. It is crucial, in this stage, to release all expectations of a sudden, magical feeling of warmth or friendship. The purpose is not to force an emotion, but to simply and sincerely hold this individual in a space of positive regard. You are using your intention like a focused beam of light, shining it on someone who has previously been in the shadows of your perception. Each time you repeat the phrases, you are choosing to see them not as a function, but as a fellow being who, just like you, wishes to be safe, to be healthy, to be happy, and to live with ease. You are consciously challenging your mind's tendency to categorize and dismiss, and instead, you are choosing to connect. The fruits of this practice are often not felt during the meditation itself, but in the moments that follow, when you re-encounter this person in your daily life. The next time you see them, something profound has shifted. They are no longer a flat, two-dimensional part of the background scenery. They seem to pop into three-dimensional focus. You might notice the specific shade of color in their eyes for the first time, or the way their brow furrows in concentration, or a genuine warmth in their smile that you had never registered before. The label, the barista, begins to dissolve, and a unique human being starts to emerge in its place. The world literally becomes more vibrant, more colorful, more alive. Each neutral person you practice with adds another splash of color to your previously monochrome perception of the world. This perceptual shift leads to one of the most beautiful and humbling realizations on the spiritual path. As you look at this person who was once a stranger, it begins to dawn on you, in a way that is felt deep in your bones, that they have a life as complex and vivid as your own. This person, right here, has a mind that is constantly buzzing with its own unique blend of hopes, dreams, memories, and anxieties. They have people they love with a fierce intensity. They have experienced their own devastating heartbreaks. They have secret insecurities they hope no one will ever discover. They have moments of quiet joy that are precious to them. They are the main character, the hero, of their own sprawling, epic story. This profound recognition of the vivid, complex inner life of every stranger is sometimes called sonder. It is the stunning realization that your life is just one of billions of other lives being lived with equal intensity all at once. It shatters the lonely illusion that you are the center of the universe. This experience is a direct result of the metta practice for the neutral person. It is the beginning of true empathy, the foundation for a compassion that is not limited by familiarity or preference. There is a Zen story about a great master who was known for bowing to everyone and everything he encountered. A skeptical student, trying to understand this strange behavior, followed him for a day. The student asked, "Master, I understand why you bow to the other monks, but why do you bow to the statues of the Buddha?" The master smiled and replied, "Because I am bowing to the Buddha." A little later, an angry villager came and shouted insults at the master for blocking the path. To the student's astonishment, the master gave the man a deep, respectful bow. The student asked, "Why did you bow to that man who was so rude to you?" The master replied, "Because I am bowing to the Buddha." Later still, the master paused on their walk and bowed deeply to a simple, unadorned stone on the side of the road. The student, now completely baffled, asked, "Master, why on earth did you bow to a common rock?" The master looked at the student with great kindness and said, "Because I am bowing to the Buddha." The student began to understand. The master had trained his mind to see the sacred potential, the inherent worthiness, the Buddha nature in everything and everyone, without exception. The practice of extending metta to the neutral person is our training in this very perception. It is our way of learning to bow with our hearts to the sacred humanity present in every stranger we meet. By undertaking this simple yet profound practice, we have built a bridge from the personal love we feel for our inner circle to a truly universal love. We have begun to dismantle the walls of indifference that keep our hearts small and our world grey. Our daily life ceases to be a series of mundane transactions and is transformed into a continuous opportunity for connection, a living field of practice. Our world becomes larger, richer, and more infused with a sense of shared humanity. We have learned to tend to the garden of our own heart. We have watered the beautiful flowers of our loved ones. And now, we have learned to see the sacredness in the common stones and blades of grass we once overlooked. Our heart has expanded in ways we might not have thought possible. Now, it is time to face the thorns. It is time to turn our attention to the most difficult corners of the garden, to those who have hurt us or who inspire our anger and resentment. This is the ultimate test of metta, and perhaps its most liberating application. RDM Wu, having journeyed through the foundational practice of kindness for ourselves, extended that warmth to our loved ones, and begun to dissolve the walls of indifference toward the stranger, our hearts have become more spacious and resilient. This expansion is beautiful, but it is not without its challenges. As the heart opens, it becomes more sensitive not only to the joy and beauty of the world, but also to its pain, its injustices, and its frictions. Inevitably, we will encounter situations and people who trigger strong, difficult, and uncomfortable reactions within us. Before we can skillfully address the external sources of our distress, wisdom dictates that we must first learn to attend to the inner fire they ignite. For what is the use of trying to extinguish a fire in our neighbor's house if our own is already ablaze? The next, crucial frontier of our practice, therefore, is to turn our gaze inward once more, not to the gentle baseline of our being, but to the turbulent, stormy weather of our own difficult emotions. We must learn to meet our fear, our anger, our grief, and our jealousy not as enemies to be conquered, but as visitors to be understood. Our culture has taught us to fear these inner storms, to suppress their thunder and flee their rain. The path of Metta offers a revolutionary alternative. It teaches us to become the sky itself, vast, open, and spacious enough to hold any storm that passes through, knowing that we are not the storm, but the boundless awareness in which it arises and eventually fades. Our entire cultural narrative around difficult emotions is steeped in the language of warfare. We are told to fight our demons, to battle our anxiety, to conquer our fears, and to control our anger. This adversarial framing immediately places us in a state of inner conflict, a painful and exhausting civil war waged against parts of our own psyche. This approach is doomed to fail for two primary reasons. The first strategy in this war is typically suppression. When a difficult emotion like anger or sadness arises, we are taught that it is a sign of weakness or a loss of control. So we push it down. We swallow our anger, bite back our tears, and distract ourselves from our fear, hoping it will simply go away. But emotions are energy, and suppressed energy does not vanish. It is like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes an immense and constant effort, and the moment our vigilance slips, the ball bursts to the surface with even greater force. This suppressed emotional energy festers within us. It can manifest as chronic anxiety, a constant, low-level hum of dread with no identifiable source. It can emerge as physical ailments, tension headaches, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, and a compromised immune system. Or it can build up to a critical point and explode in a sudden, disproportionate outburst of rage or a debilitating depressive episode, leaving us and those around us bewildered and hurt. Suppression is not a solution. It is merely a postponement of a much larger crisis. The other failed strategy in this inner war is uninhibited indulgence. This is the belief that the way to deal with an emotion is to let it all out. When anger arises, we vent. We shout, we slam doors, we type out furious emails. We rehearse our grievances over and over again in our minds. In the moment, this can feel like a powerful release, a letting off of steam. But what we are actually doing is the opposite of release. We are, in fact, feeding the fire. Each time we act out our anger, we are deepening its neural pathway in our brain. We are rehearsing the state of being angry, making it a more familiar and easily accessible reaction in the future. We are strengthening the very habit we wish to overcome. Pouring gasoline on a fire does not extinguish it. It creates a conflagration that burns us and everyone nearby. Similarly, wallowing in sadness or endlessly indulging in fearful fantasies does not process these emotions. It mires us in them, creating cycles of rumination that drain our life force and disconnect us from the present moment. Both suppression and indulgence are dead ends. They are two sides of the same coin of misunderstanding, both born from the false belief that these emotions are problems to be eliminated. The path of Metta offers a third way, a wise and compassionate middle path that invites us not to fight or to fuel our emotions, but to befriend them. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a simple yet profoundly transformative image for this practice. He taught that when a difficult emotion like anger arises, we should not push it away or act it out. Instead, we should learn to greet it with the gentle care of a mindful host. He would say, "When my anger is born, I invite it to come and sit with me. I say to it, 'Hello, my little anger. I see you are there. How are you today?' I offer my anger a cup of tea, and I just sit with it." This simple parable contains the entire map for transforming our relationship with our inner world. The first step is recognition. "Hello, my little anger. I see you are there." This is the practice of mindfulness, the simple, non-judgmental acknowledgement of what is present. Notice the subtle but crucial shift in language. Not "I am angry," but "I see that anger is here." This phrasing immediately creates a space between our sense of self and the emotion. The anger is not the totality of who we are. It is a temporary visitor, a passing weather pattern in the vast sky of our awareness. This simple act of naming, "This is anger, this is fear, this is sadness," begins to tame the emotion, robbing it of its power to completely overwhelm us. The second step is acceptance. I invite it to come and sit with me. This is a radical departure from our habitual warfare. We are not calling security to escort this unwanted visitor out of the building. We are not locking it in the basement. We are offering it a seat. This act immediately ceases the inner struggle. When we stop fighting the emotion, we liberate the vast amount of energy that was consumed by the conflict. This doesn't mean we approve of the emotion or want it to stay forever. It simply means we accept the reality that, in this moment, it is here. Fighting with reality is always a losing battle. By accepting its presence, we can begin to work with it skillfully. The final and most crucial step is care. I offer my anger a cup of tea. This is the heart of Metta. This is where we bring a tender, gentle, and caring attention to our own experience. We are not analyzing the anger, or judging it, or trying to make it go away. We are simply holding it with kindness, enveloping it in a compassionate embrace. This practice can be applied directly in the midst of emotional turmoil. When you feel a wave of anger, anxiety, or grief rising, the first step is to bring your attention out of the swirling stories in your head and into the direct, physical sensations in your body. Where does this emotion live? Is fear a cold knot in your stomach? Is anger a burning fire in your chest and a tightness in your jaw? Is sadness a heavy weight on your shoulders and an ache in your throat? Anchor your awareness in these physical sensations. This grounds you in the present reality of the emotion and interrupts the mind's tendency to spin catastrophic tales about the past or future. The second step is to name it softly to yourself. This is anger, this is fear. And the third, most important step is to apply the phrases of Metta, not to the emotion itself, but to yourself, the one who is experiencing this difficult feeling. You hold yourself with the same kindness a loving parent would offer a frightened or hurting child. You can silently say, "May I be safe with this feeling. May I be at peace with this anger. May I hold this sadness with tenderness and care." You are becoming your own source of comfort, your own inner refuge. You are learning to be the compassionate mother to your own crying heart, a mother who does not need to fix the pain, but simply holds her child with unconditional love until the storm of tears subsides. For many of us, this is a skill we were never taught. We are now, through this practice, becoming our own wise and loving inner parent, providing the safety and unconditional acceptance that may have been missing in our past. When we can create this safe, compassionate space to hold our emotions, something remarkable begins to happen. We start to understand that these difficult feelings are not random, malevolent forces. They are intelligent, albeit often primitive, messengers. They are signals from a deeper part of ourselves, carrying vital information about our needs, our values, and our wounds. Just as physical pain is a signal to remove your hand from a hot stove, emotional pain is a signal that something needs your attention. When we stop fighting the messenger and instead sit down to listen to its message, we can access a profound layer of self-understanding and wisdom. Consider anger. On the surface, it is a hot, destructive, and often frightening energy. But when we hold it with the cool, gentle presence of Metta, we can look beneath its fiery surface. Very often, we find that beneath the anger lies a softer, more vulnerable emotion. Anger is frequently a secondary reaction, a protective shield for underlying feelings of hurt, fear, or injustice. When you feel anger, Instead of lashing out, you can learn to ask with kindness, what is the hurt that lies beneath this anger? What precious part of me feels threatened or violated? What boundary has been crossed that needs to be wisely and compassionately re-established? By listening to the anger, its raw, chaotic energy can be transformed into the clear, focused, and courageous energy needed to protect our boundaries or to act skillfully against injustice. Fear and anxiety work in a similar way. They are the mind's alarm system, designed to alert us to potential threats, whether real or imagined. In our modern world, this alarm system is often hyperactive, triggered not by saber-toothed tigers, but by work deadlines, social situations, and fearful news headlines. The narrative of fear is always about a catastrophic future. The practice of metta brings us back to the only place we can ever be truly safe, the present moment. By holding our fear with kindness, may I be safe in this moment, we soothe the overactive alarm system. We can then listen to its message with wisdom. What part of me feels insecure? What is the perceived threat? What resources of strength and courage do I possess right now to meet this challenge? The scattered, paralyzing energy of anxiety, when held with metta, can be transformed into the wise and discerning energy of prudence, foresight, and careful preparation. Even an emotion as heavy as grief can be met with this same gentle embrace. Our culture often treats sadness as a problem to be solved as quickly as possible. We are told to cheer up, move on, and get over it. But grief is not a problem. It is a natural and necessary expression of love. It is the measure of what we have lost because we valued it so deeply. To rush through grief is to dishonor that love. Metta practice creates a sacred, protected space where we can allow our sadness to simply be. We can hold our own aching heart and whisper, "It's okay to feel this. May I be patient with my own healing. May I hold this loss with love." In this space of tender acceptance, the heavy, isolating energy of grief can be slowly transformed into a deep, quiet, and profound appreciation for the love that was shared, weaving the memory of what was lost into the fabric of our being in a way that is healing and whole. This is the profound alchemy of metta. It is the secret art of meeting our inner demons, not with a sword, but with an open heart. We come to realize that they are not demons at all, but lost and frightened parts of ourselves, messengers from our deepest being, crying out for our attention, our understanding, and our love. By learning to greet them with mindfulness and embrace them with kindness, we cease to be at war with ourselves. We build a foundation of unshakable inner resilience, a deep self-trust that we can skillfully and compassionately navigate whatever storms may arise in our inner world. We learn that we do not need to run from ourselves or from our feelings. We discover that our own heart, when infused with the warmth of metta, can be the safest and most reliable sanctuary of all. Having learned to sit with the storms of our inner world, to hold our anger, fear, and grief with the gentle, non-judgmental warmth of metta, we arrive at a crucial turning point in our practice. The quiet meditation room, the solitary cushion, has served as our laboratory, a safe and controlled environment where we can cultivate the qualities of a compassionate heart. But a ship is not built to remain in the harbor, and a heart is not trained in kindness merely for its own solitary peace. The true purpose and test of our practice is not what happens when our eyes are closed, but what happens when they are open. It is how we carry this newfound inner stability, this cultivated warmth, out into the busy, complex, and often chaotic marketplace of our daily lives. The challenge now is to bridge the gap between our intention and our action, to ensure that metta is not just something we do for 20 minutes a day, but something we aspire to be in every moment. This is the process of weaving. Our formal practice is where we spin the strong, resilient, and compassionate thread, our life, with all its meetings and partings, its joys and frustrations, is the loom upon which we weave this thread into the very fabric of our existence, creating, moment by moment, a new reality for ourselves and for those we touch. Perhaps the most immediate and powerful arena for this practice is in our communication. Our words and our way of listening have the power to build bridges or to erect walls, to heal or to wound. So often, our speech is reactive and habitual. We speak to defend our ego, to win an argument, to prove a point, or simply to fill an uncomfortable silence. The practice of metta invites us to transform our speech from a weapon or a shield into a gift. This aligns with the Buddhist concept of right speech, which is not merely about avoiding lies, but about cultivating a way of speaking that is rooted in kindness and wisdom. Before we speak, we can learn to create a small sacred pause, and in that pause, ask ourselves 4 simple questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And is this the right time to say it? Infusing our speech with metta means we begin to choose our words with the care of a physician selecting a remedy. We learn that sometimes the kindest thing to say is nothing at all. We find that we can disagree without being disagreeable, and that we can express our own needs without blaming or attacking others. The other, equally vital, half of compassionate communication is the practice of deep listening. Most of the time, we do not truly listen. We are simply waiting for our turn to talk, our minds busy formulating our rebuttal, our next story, or our brilliant piece of advice. We listen through a thick filter of our own judgments, opinions, and agendas. Deep listening, fueled by metta, is a radical act of generosity. It is the practice of offering another person the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided, and non-judgmental attention. When we listen with metta, we are not just hearing the words being said, we are listening for the feelings, the needs, and the pain that may lie hidden beneath the surface of those words. We listen with the sole intention of understanding, not of replying. This simple shift can de-escalate conflict, create profound intimacy, and allow the other person to feel truly seen and validated, which is one of the deepest of all human needs. To offer your silent, focused, and kind attention to another being is one of the most powerful forms of metta in action. The modern workplace is another fertile, if often challenging, ground for practice. For many, work is a primary source of stress, anxiety, and ego-driven competition. The pressure to perform, to produce, and to climb the ladder can easily foster a climate of rivalry and distrust. Metta offers a powerful antidote to this zero-sum mentality, where one person's success is perceived as another's failure. When we silently and genuinely practice sending wishes of well-being to our colleagues, our boss, or our employees, may you be happy, may you be successful in your work, may you be free from stress, it begins to subtly soften the hard edges of competition. We start to see the team's success as our own. We can feel a genuine sense of joy for a colleague's promotion, rather than a pang of envy. We can offer help and support more freely, creating an atmosphere of psychological safety and cooperation that, ironically, often leads to far greater productivity and innovation than a culture driven by fear and rivalry. This practice also transforms our relationship with the work itself. When faced with a difficult project or a looming deadline, our habitual reaction is often one of stress and resistance. We can learn to meet this inner tension with metta, holding our own anxiety with the same kindness we have practiced on the cushion. We can treat ourselves with compassion when we make a mistake, rather than descending into self-recrimination. We can also reframe the very purpose of our labor. There is a beautiful story of an old cobbler whose small, humble shop was known throughout the town as a place of peace. People found that when they wore the shoes he had mended, they felt a little lighter, a little more at ease. When asked his secret, the old man explained that he saw his work as a form of meditation. As he replaced a sole or stitched a piece of leather, he would pour all of his peaceful, caring attention into the task. With every stitch, he would make a silent wish for the well-being of the person who would wear the shoes. May these shoes carry you to places of joy, he would think. May your path be safe. May you walk with a light heart. He was not just mending shoes. He was infusing an ordinary object with an extraordinary intention of kindness. This story teaches us that any work, no matter how mundane, can be transformed into a meaningful offering when it is performed with a heart of metta. Driving a bus, writing code, cleaning a room, or preparing a meal can become acts of service, opportunities to weave our thread of kindness into the world. Beyond our major interactions at work and in conversation, a life of metta is built upon a foundation of countless small, almost invisible moments of kindness. We do not need to wait for grand, dramatic opportunities to be compassionate. The practice is alive in the small choices we make every single day. It is the conscious choice to let another car merge into a line of traffic, offering a wave instead of a surge of irritation. It is holding a door open for the person behind you and making genuine eye contact for a brief moment of shared humanity. It is offering a warm, authentic smile to the checkout clerk who looks tired and overwhelmed. It is the simple act of putting your phone away when someone is talking to you, honoring them with your presence. These seemingly insignificant actions have a profound cumulative effect. They are like single drops of water that, over time, can fill a great vessel. Each small act of intentional kindness strengthens the neural pathways of compassion in our brain, making it our default way of being. We are conditioning our heart to respond to the world not with fear, judgment, or indifference, but with an open, friendly, and helpful presence. Finally, it is essential to understand the beautiful synergy between metta and its companion practice, mindfulness. They are often described as the two wings of a bird. You need both to achieve flight. Mindfulness, or sati, is the wing of clear awareness. It is the capacity to see our experience, both inner and outer, exactly as it is, without adding or subtracting anything. It is the clear, knowing quality of the mind that simply recognizes, this is a traffic jam. This is the feeling of irritation arising. It provides an accurate, unbiased map of reality. Metta, however, is the wing of attitude. It is the quality of heart we bring to that reality. It is the warmth, the friendliness, and the compassion with which we respond to what mindfulness sees. It is the how of our relating to the world. So, mindfulness sees the traffic jam and feels the irritation. Metta then responds by holding that feeling of irritation with kindness. May I be patient with myself in this moment, and then extends outward to the other drivers. May you be safe. May you reach your destination without stress. Mindfulness without metta can become cold and detached. Metta without mindfulness can be sentimental and ungrounded. Together, they create a powerful, wise, and deeply compassionate presence that can navigate any situation in life with grace. The cushion is where we gather and strengthen our beautiful, compassionate thread. But it is here, in the midst of our messy, beautiful, ordinary lives, that the great tapestry is woven. Every word, every action, every thought, every breath is another opportunity to weave a kinder, more connected, and more peaceful world, beginning with the sacred, precious space immediately around us. As we begin to weave the practice of metta into the fabric of our daily interactions, our hearts naturally become softer and more responsive. We feel more, connect more easily, and find a growing capacity for kindness. This opening is a beautiful and essential part of the path. Yet, this very sensitivity makes us vulnerable to a set of subtle imposters, states of mind that look and feel very much like the virtues we are trying to cultivate, but are in fact skillful counterfeits. In Buddhist psychology, these are known as the near enemies. A near enemy is not an opposite, like hatred is the opposite of love. Instead, it is a quality that masquerades as a virtue, a forgery that is easy to mistake for the real thing. It is like counterfeit money. It glitters. It can pass for real in dim light, but it holds no true value and can ultimately cause harm. Learning to distinguish the pure gold of Metta from the glittering shine of its near enemies is not a cause for discouragement. Rather, it is a sign of a maturing practice. It marks the point where we begin to pair the warmth of our heart with the clear light of wisdom, ensuring that the love we offer the world is not only sincere, but truly liberating. The primary near enemy of Metta, or loving kindness, is a state we know all too well: attachment, often disguised as sentimental or conditional love. On the surface, it feels intensely positive. It is the powerful, emotional bond we feel for a specific person, the feeling that our happiness is intrinsically linked with theirs. It is the fierce, protective love of a parent for a child, or the passionate, consuming love of a romantic partner. This form of love is the subject of nearly all our songs, poems, and movies. It is deeply human and can be a source of immense joy. However, when we examine it closely, we see that it is fundamentally different from the boundless, freeing nature of Metta. The signature feeling of attachment is one of pulling or grasping. It is a love that says, "I need you. I cannot be happy without you." It is rooted in a sense of self, in what the other person provides for USA, sense of security, validation, purpose, or pleasure. Its underlying, often unspoken mantra is not, "May you be happy," but rather, "May you continue to behave in ways that make me happy." Metta, in stark contrast, has a signature feeling of radiating or releasing. It is a love that flows outward from a full heart, not one that grasps from a place of perceived lack. It is universal, not exclusive. It does not depend on the other person's actions or their relationship to us. Metta is the wish for another's well-being for their own sake, completely independent of our own story. It is a love that can say, "I wish you profound happiness, even if that happiness does not include me. I wish you peace, even if your path to peace takes you far away from me." This is a truly selfless and liberating love. It frees the other person from the impossible burden of being responsible for our happiness, and it frees us from the anxiety and fear that inevitably accompany clinging. In our formal practice, we can learn to detect when our metta has soured into its near enemy. When you are directing metta toward a loved one, notice the subtle flavor of the feeling that arises. Is there a sense of spaciousness, of calm, of a gentle, radiating warmth, or is there a subtle clenching in the heart, an undercurrent of anxiety, a fear of loss? If you find yourself drifting into thoughts of loneliness, "What would I do without them?" or a sense of sadness about their eventual departure, it is a sign that your mind has slipped from the open hand of metta into the closed fist of attachment. When this happens, there is no need for self-judgment. The practice is to simply recognize it. Attachment is here, and with a gentle kindness for your own human heart, guide your intention back to the pure, unconditional wish. May you be happy. Just as metta has a near enemy, so too does its close cousin, karuna, or compassion. The near enemy of compassion is pity. This distinction is crucial because when we encounter suffering in the world, it is easy to mistake the feeling of pity for true, compassionate action. Pity, like attachment, is rooted in the ego and creates a sense of separation. When we feel pity, we are looking down on someone from a position of perceived superiority. Our heart says, "Oh, you poor, unfortunate thing, how terrible your situation is. I am so glad I am not you." There can be a subtle sense of self-satisfaction in pity. It reinforces our own identity as the strong one, the lucky one, the one who has it all together, and it reduces the other person to a helpless victim. Pity creates distance. True compassion, on the other hand, is born from a recognition of shared humanity and creates connection. It is the experience of looking across at another person as an equal. The heart of compassion says, "I see your suffering, and it touches me because I know what it is to suffer. I am here with you in this. I recognize your strength and your resilience in the face of this pain." Compassion dissolves the boundaries between self and other. It does not feel superior, it feels connected. There is a powerful parable that illustrates the danger of acting from pity instead of from wise compassion. A kind person was walking in a garden and saw a butterfly struggling for hours to emerge from its chrysalis. The butterfly's body was convulsing, fighting desperately against its confinement. Feeling a great sense of pity for the tiny creature's immense struggle, the person decided to help. They ran inside, found a pair of small, sharp scissors, and very carefully snipped the remaining threads of the chrysalis to widen the opening. The butterfly emerged immediately and without any further effort. The person felt proud of their compassionate intervention, but what they saw next horrified them. The butterfly's body was swollen, and its wings were small, damp, and shriveled. It crawled around for the rest of its short life, but it was never able to fly. What the person, in their ignorant pity, did not understand was that the intense struggle to break free from the chrysalis was nature's essential process for forcing the fluid from the butterfly's body out into its wings, strengthening them and making them large and powerful enough for flight. The well-intentioned help, born from a place of pity that could not bear to witness a struggle, ultimately crippled the very creature it sought to save. This story serves as a profound reminder. Pity often seeks to remove the struggle, but in doing so, it can deny another being the very experience they need to develop their own strength and wisdom. True compassion, tempered by wisdom, respects the other's journey. It offers support and presence without disempowering them, trusting in their innate capacity to navigate their own challenges. So, how do we become skilled goldsmiths of the heart, able to distinguish the true gold from the counterfeit? The indispensable tool is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the faculty of discerning awareness that acts as a watchtower for the mind. As our practice deepens, we are not just generating feelings of warmth, we are simultaneously observing the quality and texture of those feelings with a clear, unbiased attention. When you believe you are practicing metta, you can ask yourself a series of introspective questions. What is the subtle flavor of this experience? Is there a feeling of spaciousness, generosity, and release? Or is there a subtle undertone of craving, neediness, or a desire for a specific outcome? Am I wishing this person well for their own sake? Or am I wanting something from them? When you encounter suffering and believe you are feeling compassion, you can ask, do I feel a sense of solidarity, of a shared human heart? Or do I feel a subtle sense of being separate from and above this person's predicament? This is not an interrogation. It is a gentle, curious investigation. It is the act of becoming a connoisseur of your own inner states. When you notice that a near enemy like attachment or pity has arisen, the response is not one of self-criticism or disappointment. To scold yourself for feeling attachment would simply be another form of unkindness. Instead, the practice is to meet the discovery with the same metta you are cultivating. You acknowledge it gently. Ah, I see that pity is here now and then. With that recognition, you have the choice to gently guide your heart back to the pure, connecting intention of true compassion, or the selfless, radiating intention of pure metta. Learning to spot these near enemies is not a sign that your practice is failing. On the contrary, it is a definitive sign that your wisdom and sensitivity are growing. It shows that you are no longer content with the superficial appearance of kindness, but are committed to cultivating a love that is truly and profoundly liberating for all. As we delve deeper into the practice of metta, learning to distinguish its authentic warmth from the subtle chill of its near enemies, we inevitably arrive at a critical juncture on the path. This work of subtle discernment, of trying to get it right, can awaken a powerful and persistent inner adversary, the voice of doubt. The mind, accustomed to certainty and measurable results, begins to question the entire enterprise. It whispers, "Is this actually working? Am I just fooling myself? How can silently wishing someone well possibly make a difference?" This rising tide of skepticism and its close companion, impatience, is not a sign that you are failing or that the practice is not for you. On the contrary, it is a predictable, universal, and even necessary stage of the journey. In the Buddhist tradition, skeptical doubt is recognized as one of the 5 hindrances, a known obstacle that arises for every sincere practitioner. It is a gatekeeper that tests our resolve. To fight it is to give it strength. To flee from it is to abandon the path. The wise approach is to turn and face this gatekeeper with the same mindful kindness we are cultivating, to understand its nature, and to learn how to open the gate and walk through. The doubting mind is not a single entity, it is a committee of inner critics, each with its own distinct voice and strategy. The first and most common is the skeptic. This is the voice of pure rationalism, the part of our mind that demands empirical proof and scoffs at anything that smells of sentimentality. It says, "This is just wishful thinking. You are sitting here talking to yourself. There is no scientific mechanism by which your good thoughts can affect another person or change your own brain chemistry. It feels foolish and unproductive." This voice is particularly strong in a culture that prizes logic and material evidence above all else. It wants data, charts, and peer-reviewed studies before it will sanction even a moment of quiet goodwill. The second voice is the impatient one. This critic is a product of our modern culture of instant gratification. It wants results, and it wants them now. After a few days or weeks of practice, it begins its complaint. "I've been doing this diligently, and I still get angry. I don't feel boundless love for the person who cut me off in traffic. When does the enlightenment happen? This is taking too long. Perhaps I should try a different meditation app, a different style, a different teacher. This one clearly isn't working for me." This voice treats spiritual practice like a consumer product, expecting immediate and dramatic effects, and is quick to discard anything that requires long-term, patient cultivation. Finally, there is the most insidious voice, the inadequate one. This voice doesn't attack the practice itself, but our own capacity to do it. It is the voice of the inner critic we met earlier, now masquerading as a spiritual authority. It laments, "I'm not feeling what I'm supposed to be feeling. My mind is too busy. I can't concentrate. I'm just not a naturally kind or compassionate person. I must be doing it wrong. Everyone else who does this probably feels blissful and serene, but I just feel bored and restless." This voice turns the practice into a performance review, one in which we always receive a failing grade. It creates a paralyzing sense of personal deficiency, making us want to give up, not because the path is flawed, but because we believe we are. Recognizing these 3 voices is the first step toward disarming them. They are not objective truths. They are ancient, impersonal patterns of the mind, common to all who undertake a journey of inner transformation. The antidote to these voices is not to argue with them, but to engage in a form of wise and patient action. To the skeptic, we can propose a simple shift in perspective. Treat the practice not as an act of faith, but as a personal scientific experiment. You do not need to believe in it. You only need to test the hypothesis. The hypothesis is this: the consistent and sincere practice of cultivating goodwill may lead to a noticeable reduction in my own stress, reactivity, and inner conflict, and may improve the quality of my relationships. The method is to commit to the daily practice for a set period, perhaps 30 days, with the discipline of a researcher. The instruction is to suspend judgment during the trial. You simply perform the experiment as prescribed, day after day. You observe the data, your inner states, your emotional responses, your outward interactions with a neutral, curious eye. You are not looking for a miracle. You are simply gathering information. This approach bypasses the need for belief and shifts the focus to direct, personal investigation. To the impatient one, we must offer the medicine of deep patience, a quality best understood through analogy. When you plant a tree, you do not expect a towering oak to appear overnight. You place the seed in the soil, you provide it with water and sunlight, and then you trust in the invisible, inexorable process of growth. For months, it may seem as if nothing is happening, but deep beneath the surface, roots are taking hold, preparing the foundation for future growth. Metta practice is precisely this. Each session of quiet intention is an act of watering the seed. The growth is happening deep within your consciousness, subtly repatterning your neural pathways and softening the hardened soil of your heart. To demand immediate results is as foolish as digging up the seed every day to see if it has sprouted, an act that would surely kill it. This leads to the classic parable of the person digging a well. A village, desperate for water, sends a man to dig a well. He chooses a spot and begins to dig. After digging for an entire day, he has gone 10 feet deep, but has found no water. Frustrated and impatient, he abandons the hole and moves to a different spot, convinced it must be better. He digs another 10 feet, and again finds only dry earth. He repeats this process in 5 different locations, digging 5 shallow 10-foot holes. He has expended enough effort to dig 50 feet deep, but because his effort was scattered and his patience thin, the village remains without water. A wise elder then advises him, "The spring of abundant water is not found at the surface. It lies deep within the earth. If you had devoted all of your effort to that very first hole, if you had the courage and perseverance to dig 50 feet deep in one place, you would have reached the inexhaustible spring." The message is profoundly clear. In a world that encourages spiritual shopping and hopping from one technique to another, true transformation requires the courage to stay with one path, to dig deep, and to patiently work through the layers of dry, resistant earth. Finally, to soothe the voice of the inadequate one, we must explore the true meaning of faith in the Buddhist tradition. The Pali word for faith, saddha, does not mean blind belief or accepting something without evidence. A more accurate translation is confidence, trust, or conviction. Crucially, saddha is not a prerequisite for starting the path. It is the result of walking it. This confidence develops in stages. The first stage is one of a provisional trust, or a willing suspension of disbelief. It is the willingness to try the experiment, to trust that a path that has been practiced for over 2.5 millennia by countless individuals might have some merit. The second stage is experiential confidence. As we continue the practice, we begin to have small, undeniable glimpses of its benefits. We might have a moment where we catch ourselves before a reactive, angry comment. We might feel a genuine, unforced warmth for a stranger. We might notice a day where our inner critic is a little quieter. These small verifications are incredibly important. They are our personal data points, proving the hypothesis. They build our confidence from a place of direct experience. The final stage is an unshakable conviction. After long and dedicated practice, the qualities of metta become so deeply integrated into our being that we no longer need to believe the practice works. We know it works because it has fundamentally changed our relationship to ourselves and to the world. Our faith is no longer a hopeful theory, but a lived reality. Therefore, the message to the part of us that feels inadequate is this: you do not need to feel anything special to begin. You do not need to be a naturally compassionate person. Your only job is to show up, to sit down, and to do the work with as much sincerity as you can muster on any given day. The discipline of the practice itself will give birth to the inspiration and the confidence. On the days you feel nothing, your patient effort is your expression of faith. On the days you feel restless, your willingness to sit for just one more minute is your expression of faith. We meet the doubting mind not by trying to think our way out of it, but by patiently acting our way through it. We learn to see doubt not as a stop sign, but as a visitor. It may arise, it may speak its piece, but it does not have the authority to halt our journey. We can learn to nod to it politely, acknowledge its presence, and then, with quiet determination, we continue to dig our well, confident that the life-giving spring of boundless love lies not at the surface of fleeting feeling, but in the unwavering commitment to the depths of our own heart. As our practice of metta gains a stable and patient footing, overcoming the initial hurdles of doubt and impatience, we earn the capacity to turn our attention toward the fundamental truths of existence. The warmth and resilience we have cultivated in our hearts becomes a source of courage, allowing us to look squarely at the nature of reality without flinching. The first and most foundational of these truths, the very bedrock upon which all Buddhist wisdom is built, is the universal law of anicca, a Pali word that translates as impermanence, inconstancy, or change. At first, this teaching can sound bleak or nihilistic, a grim reminder that everything we love will eventually fade. But this is a profound misunderstanding. The teaching of impermanence is not a philosophical doctrine to be believed, but a simple, observable law of nature, as neutral and as constant as gravity. It is our resistance to this law, our desperate attempt to build a permanent shelter on the shifting sands of time, that is the true source of our suffering. The great challenge and the great opportunity is to learn how to love deeply, to connect wholeheartedly, and to live with joyful engagement in a world where everything is in constant flux. The path of metta provides the answer, showing us how to love not in spite of impermanence, but because of it. The law of anicca operates on every conceivable level of our experience. On the grandest scale, it is obvious. We see the seasons turn, one into the next. We know that mountains rise and erode, that civilizations flourish and collapse, that stars are born and eventually die. On a human scale, we witness it in our own lives. We are born, we grow through childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. We age, and eventually, our bodies will cease to function. This is the great, undeniable arc of change that we often spend our entire lives trying to ignore. But impermanence is also at play in the far more subtle textures of our daily existence. Our moods and emotions are a constantly shifting weather pattern. The joy of one moment gives way to the irritation of the next, which may dissolve into a quiet melancholy. Our thoughts are a ceaseless river, flowing through the mind without our bidding. Our relationships are not static entities. They are living, dynamic processes that evolve and change with every interaction. The person you were 10 years ago, or even 10 minutes ago, is not the person you are right now. Even at the most microscopic level, our physical bodies are monuments to impermanence. We think of ourselves as a solid, continuous me, but in reality, the body is a bustling community of trillions of cells that are in a constant state of dying and being replaced. The body you have today is not the same physical entity it was 7 years ago. You are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. You are not a thing, but a process. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus captured this with his famous insight: you cannot step into the same river twice, a teaching that perfectly mirrors the Buddhist understanding. You cannot step into the same river twice, because the water is ever flowing, constantly changing. But just as important, you are not the same person who stepped into it a moment before. We are, each of us, a flowing river of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and cells. The great suffering of human life, the dukkha, arises from our desperate attempt to stand still in the middle of this river. We try to grasp and hold on to the pleasant moments, the joyful feelings, the people we love, seeking to freeze them in time. And we try to push away and deny the unpleasant moments, the painful feelings, the experiences of loss. This constant struggle against the natural, unstoppable flow of reality is the very definition of stress, anxiety, and heartbreak. There is no story that illustrates this truth more poignantly than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman in the time of the Buddha whose first and only child had died. Driven mad by an ocean of grief, she could not accept the reality of her loss. She picked up the small, lifeless body of her son and wandered from house to house, clutching him to her chest, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her madness, others looked away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her profound suffering and directed her to the one person who might have a cure. He told her to go and see the Buddha. Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for the magical medicine. The Buddha looked at her not with pity, but with an immense, seeing compassion. He did not dismiss her plea. He told her, "There is only one medicine that can help you. I need you to go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed. But it must be a mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." Filled with a surge of desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her quest. She went to the first house, and the woman who answered the door was happy to give her a mustard seed. But when Kisa Gotami asked her crucial question, the woman's face fell. "The living are few," she said, "but the dead are many. We lost our beloved father just last year." So Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had mustard seeds to spare, but every family had also been touched by the hand of death. One had lost a husband, another a daughter, another a sibling. As the day wore on and the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat by the side of the road, her task unfulfilled. She looked at the flickering lights of the village, appearing one by one in the gathering dusk, only to be extinguished later in the night. In that moment, the profound, unshakable truth of impermanence washed over her. Her personal, isolating agony dissolved into a universal, connecting compassion. She understood that her grief was not a unique curse. It was the shared inheritance of all beings who live and love in this world. Death was not a thief that had singled her out. It was a fundamental, inseparable part of life itself. The medicine the Buddha had sent her to find was not a mustard seed. It was this very realization. She gently buried her child in the forest and returned to the Buddha, no longer a woman crazed by grief, but a woman awakened to wisdom. This story reveals that a true understanding of impermanence does not lead to despair or nihilism. It leads to the birth of a profound and universal compassion. It breaks our hearts open from the small prison of our personal story and connects us to the great shared story of all life. And it is here that the practice of metta becomes our most essential tool. Metta is the wise and courageous response to the truth of anicca. When we truly understand that all things are fleeting, we are faced with a choice. We can either shut down our hearts to avoid the inevitable pain of loss, living a life of cautious, grey detachment, or we can choose to love even more fiercely, more completely, and more presently, precisely because we know that this moment, this person, this experience is precious and unrepeatable. Metta is the conscious choice for the second path. It is the practice of loving the flower in its full bloom without the anxious need to prevent it from eventually wilting. When we can embrace impermanence, we can learn to love with a new kind of courage. The frantic, anxious energy we once spent trying to control the future, trying to shore up our defenses against loss, can be reinvested into the present moment. We are freed to be fully with the people we love, right here, right now. Our love is no longer tainted by the subtle, unspoken demand. Please don't ever change. Please don't ever leave me. It becomes a purer, more generous offering. We can love the person who is in front of us today, not the memory of who they were yesterday, or the projection of who we hope they will be tomorrow. This is a love that liberates both ourselves and others. This new understanding can also deepen our formal practice. As we send wishes of metta, we can hold a gentle background awareness of our shared impermanence. As you wish yourself well, you can acknowledge, this body is changing, this mind is changing. May I meet these changes with peace and courage. As you wish a loved one well, you can recognize, this person is a flowing river of change, just as I am. May they navigate the currents of their life with grace. May they be happy in this precious, fleeting moment. This adds a profound layer of wisdom and tenderness to our metta, helping us to love the dynamic, unfolding process of a person, rather than a fixed and static idea of them. Impermanence, then, is not life's curse, but its most poignant and powerful teacher. It is the truth that infuses every moment with an irreplaceable preciousness. When we meet this truth with the steady, unconditional warmth of a heart trained in metta, we unlock the secret to loving freely and fearlessly. We learn to hold everything, our moments of joy, our periods of sorrow, our most cherished relationships, our very own lives with an open and gentle hand. We appreciate their beauty fully for the time that they are here, without crushing them in the desperate fist of our attachment. This is the path to finding an unshakable peace in the very heart of a world defined by change. Once we begin to absorb the deep and resonant truth of anicca, the law of impermanence, a powerful and perhaps unsettling question naturally follows. If everything is in a state of constant flux, if our bodies, our thoughts, and our feelings are an ever-changing river, then who, or what, is the I that is witnessing all of this? Where is the permanent, solid, unchanging self at the center of this whirlwind of experience? This question leads us directly into the heart of the Buddha's most radical, most challenging, and ultimately, most liberating teaching, the truth of anatta, or not, self. For many, this concept is the most difficult to grasp, as it seems to strike at the very foundation of our identity. The idea of not self can sound like a bleak declaration of nihilism, a suggestion that we do not exist or that life is meaningless. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The teaching of anatta is not an annihilation of the person, but an annihilation of a mistaken idea. It does not claim that we do not exist, but rather that we do not exist as a separate, independent, and permanent entity, a little ghost-like CEO sitting in the control room of the brain. The teaching invites us to see that we are not a fixed noun, but a flowing verb, not an isolated island, but a dynamic wave in a vast ocean. The exploration of anatta, while intellectually challenging, is the path to the ultimate freedom from the narrow prison of the small self. And we will discover that the practice of metta, of boundless loving kindness, is the perfect emotional vehicle for navigating this profound and freeing territory. To understand anatta, we must become gentle investigators of our own experience, turning our attention inward to search for this solid, permanent self we have always assumed was there. The Buddha provided a systematic map for this investigation, suggesting we examine the 5 core components that make up a person, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. If a self exists, he reasoned, it must be found in one of these 5 categories. The first is form, or the physical body. Is this body me or mine? At first glance, it seems so. Yet, as we have seen, this body is a perfect illustration of impermanence. It is aging and changing in every moment. Its cells are constantly dying and being replaced. It can become ill or injured. If you were to lose a limb, would you be less you? Of course not. The body is a biological process that we experience, a temporary vessel we inhabit, but it cannot be the permanent, unchanging self we are searching for. The second aggregate is feeling, or sensation. These are the raw feelings that arise from contact between our sense organs and the world, categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Are our feelings the self? This is clearly not the case. Feelings are like the weather. They are utterly fleeting and unreliable. Joy arises, and we mistakenly think, I am happy. Then sadness arises, and we think, I am sad. But we are not the weather. We are the sky in which the weather happens. Feelings are impersonal events, arising due to causes and conditions, and they are far too transient to be the location of a stable self. The third aggregate is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It is the part of the mind that sees a shape and a color and labels it a red car, or hears a sound and labels it a bird singing. Are these perceptions the self? Our perceptions are entirely conditioned by our past experiences, our culture, our language, and our personal biases. Two people can look at the exact same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perceptions are learned, subjective interpretations, not a core, essential identity. The fourth aggregate is the most complex: mental formations or volitions. This category includes all of our habits, opinions, beliefs, desires, intentions, and mental patterns. This is the part we most closely identify with. It is the voice in our head, the stream of our thoughts, the force of our will. Surely, this is the self. Yet, upon closer inspection, this too is a conditioned and impermanent process. Our opinions change with new information. Our habits can be retrained with effort. Our desires shift from moment to moment. The voice in the head is an endless chatter, a product of countless causes and conditions, not a singular, authoritative self. It is a powerful mental habit, but it is not the totality of our being. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is the raw faculty of awareness, itself seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and knowing. Perhaps this awareness is the true self, the stable observer behind it all. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is also not a monolithic entity. It arises in dependence upon conditions. Eye consciousness arises only when a functioning eye comes into contact with a visible form. Ear consciousness arises only when a functioning ear comes into contact with a sound. It is a flickering, dependent process, not a permanent, independent soul watching the show from a private theater in our heads. After this thorough investigation, after looking in every corner of our physical and mental experience, we are left with a startling conclusion. Nowhere can we find a solid, separate, permanent self. A person is a dynamic, interdependent process, a flowing river of these five changing components, arising and ceasing from moment to moment. At first, this realization can feel disorienting, but the next step is to see that the mistaken belief in a separate self is the primary source of nearly all our suffering. This belief in me is the architect of a prison. The very moment we create a solid concept of I, we automatically create the concept of other. This is the fundamental division, the original sin of the ego, from which all conflict is born. I want to be happy, and you are either a tool to help me, a competitor for the same scarce resources, or an irrelevant obstacle. This us versus them mentality is the root of everything from petty personal arguments to global warfare. The separate self, by its very nature, feels incomplete, like a ghost with a hole at its center. It spends its entire existence trying to fill this void, to make itself feel more real, more solid, and more secure. It does this by constantly pulling things toward its self-possessions, praise, power, pleasant experiences and by violently pushing away anything that threatens its fragile existence. Criticism, loss, sickness, and pain. This endless, exhausting cycle of craving and aversion, of grasping and resisting, is the very engine of what the Buddha called dukkha, or profound dissatisfaction. Furthermore, this belief in being an isolated consciousness trapped inside a skin bag is the source of our deepest existential loneliness. It is the feeling of being fundamentally cut off from the world, a lonely spectator looking out at life through the windows of the eyes. We spend so much energy constructing, polishing, and defending a self-image, a personal brand, a story of who I am, and we live in constant, low-grade terror of that fragile story being contradicted or damaged. This is where the practice of metta reveals itself to be not just a pleasant feeling, but a profound and direct expression of the wisdom of anatta. Metta is the practice of systematically dissolving the very boundaries that the ego works so hard to construct. When we move through the stages of the practice, we are retracing the steps of our mistaken identity and then transcending them. We start with me, then move to my loved ones, then to the neutral other, and finally to the enemy other. In the final stage of the practice, we learn to radiate metta in all directions, to all beings without distinction. In doing so, we are actively training the mind to see beyond the artificial categories of self and other, good and bad, mine and not mine. The boundless, unconditional wish, "May all beings be happy," is the most radical statement against the ego's project of separation. It is a declaration of interdependence, a recognition that my well-being and your well-being are not separate enterprises. We are all caught in the same web of existence. The most powerful metaphor for understanding the relationship between the self and the truth of anatta is that of a wave in the ocean. Imagine a single, small wave born from the winds and currents far out at sea. The wave has its own unique characteristics, its own height, its own speed, its own particular shape and form. As it travels, it might look at the other waves around it. It might feel pride, "I am taller and faster than that wave over there," or envy, "I wish I had the power and majesty of that great swell." It might fear the other waves, or feel a sense of competition. Its greatest fear is the shoreline, which it perceives as its death, the end of its existence as a wave. This is the perspective of the separate self. It sees itself as a distinct, vulnerable entity, defined by its form and terrified of its own dissolution. But suppose this wave could, for a moment, look deeply into its own true nature. In that moment of profound insight, it would realize a startling truth. I am not just a wave. My fundamental substance is water. In that single realization, everything changes. The fear of the other waves vanishes because it sees that they too are made of the very same water. The envy and the pride dissolve because it understands that all forms are temporary expressions of the same one substance, and the terror of the shoreline is transformed. Crashing on the shore is no longer death. It is simply a change of form, a rejoining with the vastness of the ocean from which it was never, for a single moment, truly separate. It does not cease to exist. It simply ceases to exist as a wave. It realizes its true identity is the entire ocean. This is the promise of anatta. We are the waves, living in the fearful, competitive delusion of our separateness. The practice of metta is the act of looking deeply into our own nature and the nature of others. When we send a genuine wish of goodwill to another person, we are one wave recognizing the watery nature of another wave. When we wish for their happiness, we are in essence one part of the great ocean, wishing another part of the ocean well. This practice directly undermines the ego's primary project of division and self-preservation. As this understanding deepens, not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt reality in the heart, the the painful affliction of existential loneliness begins to heal. It is replaced by a profound sense of belonging, of kinship, of being intimately interwoven with the entire fabric of life. We are not an isolated spectator. We are a vital and inseparable participant. We are not a lonely thread. We are an integral part of a magnificent, interconnected tapestry. The truth of not self, when experienced through the warm lens of metta, is not a loss of self. It is the ultimate homecoming, an expansion of our identity from the small, fearful, and temporary wave to the boundless, peaceful, and eternal ocean. It is the realization that in loving all, we are truly learning to love our one, undivided self. After exploring the profound and sometimes abstract philosophical truths of impermanence and not self, it is natural for the mind to seek solid ground. What does all of this mean for the physical body I inhabit right here, right now? Is there a tangible, measurable basis for these experiences of peace, connection, and inner freedom? For centuries, contemplative practitioners have known the answer through the laboratory of their own direct experience, feeling the tangible shifts in their well-being. But today, we are in a uniquely privileged position. Modern science, with its remarkable tools of investigation, is beginning to draw a detailed map of the very territory that contemplatives have explored for millennia. We are now able to see, in the concrete language of biology, how the simple, ancient practice of metta can physically rewire the brain, calm the nervous system, and fundamentally transform our physical health. This is not a matter of faith, but of physiology. We are discovering that kindness is not just a moral virtue, it is a biological imperative, a vital nutrient for the human organism to not only survive, but to thrive. The journey of this transformation begins in the 3-pound universe inside our skull, the human brain. For a long time, it was believed that the adult brain was a fixed and static organ. But one of the most revolutionary discoveries of modern neuroscience is the concept of neuroplasticity, the understanding that the brain is constantly changing and reorganizing itself based on our experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. The famous axiom in neuroscience is, neurons that fire together, wire together. This means that every time you repeat a thought, indulge in a particular emotion, or practice a skill, you are physically strengthening the neural circuits associated with that activity. If you constantly rehearse thoughts of worry and resentment, you are literally building a brain that is better at worrying and resenting. The practice of metta, therefore, is a form of active, intentional neurosculpting. It is the conscious choice to build a brain that is better at kindness, empathy, and happiness. Pioneering researchers like Dr. Richard Davidson at the Center for Healthy Minds have used functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, to peer inside the brains of people while they practice loving kindness and compassion meditation. The results are stunning. They have found that this practice leads to a significant increase in activity in a key area of the brain called the left prefrontal cortex. This area is widely recognized as a seat of positive emotions like happiness, enthusiasm, joy, and a sense of well-being. Consistent practice essentially shifts the brain's entire center of emotional gravity, changing our baseline state from one of neutrality or anxiety to one of quiet, resilient happiness. It's like turning up the dimmer switch on our innate capacity for joy. Furthermore, these studies show increased activity and connectivity in brain regions associated with empathy and understanding others, such as the temporoparietal junction and the insula. In essence, practicing metta is like taking your empathy circuits to the gym. You are strengthening the neural machinery that allows you to feel connected to others and to understand their perspective, making compassion a more natural and reflexive response rather than a cognitive effort. This rewiring of the brain has a powerful and immediate effect on the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system. This system acts as the body's master control, regulating our involuntary functions like heart rate, digestion, and breathing. It has two main branches that work in opposition, like a gas pedal and a brake pedal. The first branch is the sympathetic nervous system, our gas pedal. This is the famous fight, flight, or freeze response, our ancient survival mechanism. When we perceive a threat, whether it's a physical danger or a stressful work, this system floods the body with hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure rises, and our muscles tense, preparing us for battle or escape. While essential for short-term survival, modern life, with its constant low-grade stressors, often leaves this system stuck in overdrive, leading to a state of chronic alarm that is deeply damaging to our health. The practice of metta is a direct and potent way to engage the second branch, the parasympathetic nervous system, or the body's brake pedal. This is often called the rest and digest, or, more recently, the tend and befriend system. It is the state of safety, healing, social connection, and calm. When we generate feelings of warmth, safety, and goodwill, we are sending a powerful signal to our brain and body that we are safe. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, primarily through a major nerve called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is like a superhighway of information, connecting the brain to nearly every organ in the torso, including the heart. The health of this nerve, measured as vagal tone, is one of the key markers of physical and psychological well-being. Studies have now demonstrated that a regular loving-kindness meditation practice is one of the most effective ways to increase vagal tone. Each time you sit and wish yourself and others well, you are consciously applying your body's own braking system, dialing down the stress response and shifting your entire physiology out of a state of alarm and into a state of growth, repair, and peace. The downstream effects of this shift from a state of threat to a state of safety are profound and far-reaching. One of the most significant is the reduction of chronic inflammation. While short-term inflammation is a healthy part of the immune response, chronic, low-grade inflammation, often caused by chronic stress, is now understood to be a key driver of many major modern illnesses, including heart disease, arthritis, and autoimmune disorders. Groundbreaking research has shown that consistent metta practice can actually reduce the levels of pro-inflammatory proteins, called cytokines, circulating in the bloodstream. By calming the nervous system, we are extinguishing the fires of chronic inflammation, creating the biological conditions for long-term health. This calming effect also has a direct impact on our cardiovascular system, relaxing blood vessels and lowering blood pressure. Consider the story of a man we might call Mark, a high-pressure lawyer in his late 40s. He suffered from hypertension, insomnia, and chronic indigestion, classic symptoms of a sympathetic nervous system in overdrive. Deeply skeptical but desperate, his doctor suggested he try a mindfulness and metta course. At first, he found it absurd, sitting in a room and wishing well to himself and strangers. But he committed to the experiment. For the first few weeks, he noticed little except his own resistance. But gradually, he began to notice small shifts. He was slightly less likely to snap at a junior colleague who made a mistake. He found he could listen to his wife's concerns without immediately trying to fix them. He slept through the night for the first time in years. At his 6-month checkup, he was stunned. His blood pressure, which had been stubbornly high even with medication, had dropped into the healthy range. The practice had not been a magical pill, but a slow, steady retraining of his own biology. By changing his mind, he had quite literally changed his body. Finally, the feelings of warmth, safety, and social bonding generated by metta practice are deeply associated with a remarkable neuropeptide called oxytocin, often dubbed the love hormone or cuddle hormone. Oxytocin is released when we feel trust, empathy, and connection with others. It is the biological substrate of bonding. While direct measurement is complex, the subjective experience of metta feeling of warm, open-hearted connection to all beings, a perfect psychological correlate to the known effects of oxytocin. The practice appears to be a way of consciously bathing our own brain in this chemistry of connection, healing the wounds of isolation and fostering a deep sense of belonging. The evidence, from the level of brain circuits down to the molecular level of our cells, is becoming undeniable. Metta is not a passive or sentimental platitude. It is a potent form of biological intervention. It is a practice that demonstrates, with ever-increasing clarity, that the cultivation of kindness is not merely a path to spiritual awakening, but one of the most intelligent and powerful things we can do for the health and vitality of our own physical being. Having witnessed how the focused practice of metta can create measurable, positive changes in our brains and bodies, we can now appreciate this quality in its full, original context. The path of loving kindness is not an isolated technique for stress reduction, but the radiant gateway to a complete and profound transformation of the heart. In the teachings of the Buddha, metta is the first of 4 inseparable qualities that, when cultivated together, form the complete architecture of a liberated mind. These 4 are known as the Brahma Viharas, which can be translated as the divine abodes, the sublime dwelling places, or the homes of the awakened heart. They are not 4 separate virtues to be achieved in a linear fashion, but rather 4 facets of a single, brilliant diamond. They support, balance, and enrich one another, creating a psychological and spiritual ecosystem that is whole, resilient, and boundless. These 4 abodes are loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. To learn to dwell in this sublime home is the fulfillment of our practice and the ultimate fruit of a life lived with wisdom and care. Imagine the heart as a garden. For this garden to flourish, it requires a complete and balanced ecosystem. Metta, or loving kindness, is the foundational, life-giving sunlight. As we've explored, it is the proactive and unconditional wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and well. It is the warm, radiant energy that softens the soil of the heart and provides the fundamental condition for growth. Without the steady, reliable warmth of metta, the other sublime qualities cannot take root. It is the starting point and the constant, underlying hum of the awakened heart, a baseline of universal friendliness that makes all further cultivation possible. It is the pure intention from which everything else blossoms. From this fertile ground of metta, the second divine abode, karuna, or compassion, naturally arises. If metta is the general wish for happiness, karuna is the heart's specific, quivering response when it encounters suffering. It is the immediate wish, may this being be free from this pain. Karuna is the embodiment of active empathy. It is here that we see the crucial importance of metta as a foundation. To face the immense and often overwhelming suffering of the world without the strength and stability of a heart fortified by metta is to risk being consumed by what is called empathic distress. We can become so flooded by the pain of others that we are paralyzed, leading to burnout, despair, or a complete shutdown of our capacity to feel. This is like a rescuer who, upon seeing someone drowning, jumps into the raging river without a life raft and ends up drowning alongside them. A heart trained in metta, however, has its own life raft. It has an inner source of resilience and peace that allows it to engage with suffering skillfully and courageously. It can extend a hand to the drowning person from the stability of the riverbank. True compassion is not sadness. It is not pity, which, as we have seen, is a near enemy that looks down from a place of superiority. True karuna is a state of courageous solidarity. It is the strength to be present with painer, own or another's without being broken by it. It is the motivating force behind all wise and heroic action, from a simple, comforting word to a lifetime of service. In our practice, when we are extending metta and we become aware of a person's specific struggles, our wish naturally transforms into karuna. May you find the strength to meet this challenge. May you be free from this affliction. The third divine abode, and perhaps the most challenging for the modern mind, is mudita, often translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. If karuna is the heart's response to pain, mudita is the heart's response to joy. It is the practice of feeling genuine, unselfish delight in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. In a culture that is saturated with competition and social comparison, a culture where social media feeds constantly present us with the curated highlight reels of other people's lives, mudita is the direct and powerful antidote to the pervasive sicknesses of envy and jealousy. The mind, conditioned by comparison, operates from a place of scarcity, believing that happiness is a limited resource. If someone else gets a large slice of the pie, it means there is less left for us. This comparison mind is a constant source of dissatisfaction, making it impossible to feel genuine peace. Mudita, on the other hand, is born from a mind of abundance. It understands that joy is not a zero-sum game. To practice mudita is to train the heart to celebrate the success of a colleague, the happiness of a friend, or the simple joy of a child at play, as if it were our own. This can be surprisingly difficult. We are often more comfortable commiserating in shared misfortune than we are celebrating another's unqualified success, as the latter can trigger our own insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. But to cultivate mudita is to perform an act of profound liberation for ourselves. It frees us from the exhausting, self-imposed prison of envy. It also multiplies our opportunities for happiness 1,000-fold. When we are no longer limited to the scarce moments of our own personal triumphs, the entire world becomes a potential source of joy. The success of our neighbor, the beautiful song of an artist, the scientific breakthrough of a researcher become our happiness too. The world transforms from a grim battlefield of competitors into a vibrant festival of shared celebration. Finally, holding and harmonizing these three other qualities is the fourth and culminating divine abode, upekkha, or equanimity. This is perhaps the most subtle and misunderstood of the four. Equanimity is not indifference, which is a cold, uncaring state of withdrawal. The near enemy of upekkha is a stony detachment that simply does not care. True upekkha, however, is a state of profound balance, spaciousness, and unshakable peace that is born from the combination of boundless love and deep wisdom. It is the pinnacle of the awakened heart. Upekkha is the vast, open sky that allows the sun of metta, the rain clouds of karuna, and the bright, celebratory weather of mudita to all pass through without being fundamentally disturbed. It is the quality that allows us to love all beings, our dearest friend, the neutral stranger, and the most difficult enemy with a steady and impartial warmth, because it sees the shared humanity in all of them. It is the loving heart of a wise grandparent who loves all of their grandchildren deeply, but does not get caught up in their momentary squabbles or triumphs. This profound balance arises when our boundless love is infused with the wisdom of impermanence and not self. We continue to care deeply and act compassionately, but we release our attachment to the results. We understand that we cannot control the universe. We can offer our love and our help, but how others receive it and what choices they make is not up to us. Upekkha is the inner peace that can gracefully navigate the 8 worldly winds: praise and its opposite, blame, success and its opposite, failure, pleasure and its opposite, pain, and fame and its opposite, disgrace. A person dwelling in upekkha is like a great deep mountain. The winds of praise may blow, but they are not puffed up. The storms of blame may lash, but they are not shaken. They remain steady, present, and at peace, offering their silent strength to the world. These 4 divine abodes, then, are a complete blueprint for a heart that is both infinitely soft and indestructibly strong. They are not a checklist of qualities to be ticked off, but a description of our own deepest potential when we are free from the limitations of fear, envy, and clinging. Returning to our garden, Metta is the universal sunlight that nourishes all. Karuna is the compassionate water we offer to the plants that are wilting in the heat. Mudita is the genuine delight we take in the vibrant bloom of every single flower, whether it is in our patch of the garden or another's, and upekkha is the vast, open, and silent field itself, the spacious ground of being that holds the sun, the water, and all the flowers in a perfect, peaceful, and harmonious balance. To learn to live in this garden is to find our true home. Of the 4 divine abodes, the 4 sublime expressions of an open and awakened heart, it is often mudita, or sympathetic joy, that presents the most unexpected and formidable challenge to the modern practitioner. It is one thing to cultivate a general sense of goodwill for all beings through metta, and quite another to feel genuine compassion, or karuna, when we witness their suffering. But to feel unadulterated, unselfish joy in the success and happiness of another person, especially when we ourselves may be struggling, can feel like a mountainous, almost impossible task. This difficulty is not a sign of some personal moral failing. It is rather an indication that the practice of mudita brings us into direct confrontation with one of the most deeply ingrained and painful afflictions of the human mind, the subtle poison of envy. Envy is a universal human experience, a shadowy corner of the heart where feelings of inadequacy, resentment, and ill will fester. To bravely turn the light of our awareness into this corner and to learn how to heal this poison with the gentle medicine of metta and mudita is to unlock a vast and previously untapped source of happiness and inner freedom. At its core, envy is born from a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, a cognitive error that the Buddha identified as a primary cause of suffering. This is the scarcity mindset, the deep-seated, often unconscious belief that happiness, success, recognition, and love are limited commodities. It is the mindset of a zero-sum game, where life is a great cosmic pie, and if someone else gets a large slice, it automatically means there is less left for us. When we operate from this perspective, the success of another person is perceived not as a joyful event, but as a personal threat. It highlights our own perceived lack, diminishes our sense of self-worth, and triggers a painful emotional response. This response is a bitter cocktail. There is the ache of desire for what the other person has, the sharp sting of inferiority, and often a subtle but corrosive resentment or ill will towards them, a secret wish for them to fail so that we might feel better about ourselves. This deeply ingrained pattern is turbocharged by the machinery of modern life. Social media platforms, in particular, function as relentless engines of envy. We are bombarded not with the messy, complex reality of other people's lives, but with their perfectly curated highlight reels, the dream vacation, the perfect relationship, the prestigious new job, the flawlessly beautiful selfie. Our minds, unable to resist the impulse to compare, measure our own raw, unedited, behind-the-scenes reality against their public performance of perfection. The result is a chronic, low-grade sense of inadequacy, a feeling of being perpetually behind in the race of life. This constant exposure puts our envy-generating faculties into overdrive, making the practice of mudita more challenging but also more essential than ever before. The path to transforming the poison of envy into the nectar of sympathetic joy is a gradual, two-step process. It is almost impossible to leap directly from a state of bitter envy to one of genuine joy. The heart is too contracted, the mind too hostile. We must first apply a softening agent, an antidote to the component of ill will. That antidote is metta. This is the first, crucial, and often courageous step. When you feel the familiar pang of envy towards someone, a friend who receives a promotion, a neighbor who buys a new car, an artist who achieves the recognition you desire, the practice begins by turning toward that painful feeling. First, acknowledge the feeling within yourself. Notice where the envy lives in your body, perhaps as a tightness in your chest, a sourness in your stomach, or a clenching in your jaw. Hold this painful sensation with a gentle, mindful awareness. Then, deliberately bring the image of the person you envy to mind and begin to offer them metta. Silently, you repeat the phrases, "May you be happy. May you enjoy your success. May you be well and peaceful." This can feel deeply counterintuitive, like cheering for a rival team. Your ego will scream in protest. But this act is one of profound healing, not for them, but for you. You are making a conscious choice to withdraw your energy from the toxic narrative of resentment. You are refusing to drink the poison of ill will any longer. Each repetition of the phrase, "May you be happy," is a direct countermeasure to the secret wish for them to fail. It is a brave act of letting go, of releasing the other person from the burden of your resentment and freeing yourself from the pain of carrying it. This application of metta is the key that begins to unlock the prison door of envy. It may not immediately feel joyful, but it will, over time, bring a sense of relief and spaciousness as the grip of hostility begins to loosen. Only when the heart has been softened by metta, when the sharp edges of ill will have been smoothed away, can we begin the second step, gently inviting mudita to arise. With the person still in your mind, shift your focus from a general wish for their well-being to the specific reality of their happiness. Try to imagine the situation from their perspective. Imagine the joy, the relief, the pride, or the deep satisfaction they must be feeling. Try to connect with that positive emotional energy. Then, you can gently introduce the phrases of mudita. "How wonderful for you. I feel joy for your joy. Your happiness is a beautiful thing." The goal here is not to fabricate an overwhelming feeling of ecstatic joy. The mind will immediately recognize that as false. The goal is to find even the smallest, most sincere flicker of appreciation. Perhaps you can't feel joy for their new promotion, but you can feel a small sense of happiness that their financial worries might be lessened. Perhaps you can't feel joy for their perfect relationship, but you can appreciate the simple human happiness of companionship. This tiny, authentic spark is the seed of mudita. By watering it with our gentle, repeated attention, we allow it to grow. Imagine two gardeners living side by side. The first gardener works hard in his plot, but he spends most of his energy peering over the fence at his neighbor's garden. When his neighbor's tomatoes ripen first, he feels a pang of bitterness. When his neighbor's roses bloom more vibrantly, he feels that his own flowers are dull and worthless. He secretly wishes for an early frost or a swarm of locusts to befall his neighbor's yard, imagining this would somehow make his own garden better. His attention is divided, his heart is sour, and his own plants suffer from his resentful neglect. His world is a small, cramped, and competitive space. The second gardener also works hard in her own plot, but when she looks over the fence and sees her neighbor's beautiful roses, her heart feels a sense of delight. "How wonderful," she thinks. "Those roses make the entire neighborhood more beautiful. Their fragrance drifts into my own yard." She feels inspired by her neighbor's success and may even go over to ask for advice. Because she is able to share in the joy of another, her world is vast. and filled with beauty. Her own garden thrives, tended by a heart that is open, generous, and light. The first gardener lives in the prison of envy. The second lives in the boundless freedom of mudita. The cultivation of sympathetic joy is one of the most liberating practices we can undertake. It systematically dismantles the ego's addiction to comparison. It frees us from the heavy, corrosive burden of envy and resentment. Most profoundly, it opens us up to a source of happiness that is truly infinite. If we can only feel joy when something good happens to us, our opportunities for happiness will be few and far between. But if we can learn to feel joy when something good happens to anyone, then our opportunities for happiness become limitless. Every birth, every wedding, every personal triumph, every act of kindness we witness becomes a direct source of nourishment for our own heart. By bravely facing the pain of envy with the gentle antidote of metta and patiently cultivating the precious seed of mudita, we perform a miraculous alchemy. We transform the lead of our most painful social emotion into the pure gold of boundless, shared joy, turning our world from a grim landscape of rivals into a vibrant, joyful, and supportive community. Just as we train our hearts to open to the joy and good fortune of others through the practice of mudita, the path of the four divine abodes also calls us to develop the capacity to skillfully and courageously open to their pain. This is the dwelling place of karuna, a Pali word most often translated as compassion. It is the heart's natural, trembling response in the presence of suffering, a deep and visceral resonance with pain that is coupled with the ardent wish, may this being be free from this suffering. On the surface, compassion may seem like a simple, spontaneous human emotion, but to cultivate a compassion that is sustainable, wise, and truly beneficial is a profound skill. It requires far more than just a tender heart. It requires a strong one. Many of the kindest and most empathetic people in the world, caregivers, healers, social activists, and devoted parents, find themselves overwhelmed and exhausted, a state often called compassion fatigue or empathic distress. They burn out because their hearts, though open, lack the necessary resilience to engage with the immense suffering of the world without being consumed by it. We will now explore how the steady, radiant warmth of metta provides this essential strength, creating a secure container that allows us to face the world's pain not with despair, but with a courageous and healing presence. To understand the relationship between metta and karuna, imagine seeing someone struggling in a raging river. A person with an untrained, though perhaps tender, heart might be so overcome by raw empathy for the drowning person that they impulsively leap into the torrent, only to find themselves swept away by the same current. This is empathic distress. Two people are now drowning instead of one. A person whose heart is fortified by a deep and stable practice of metta, however, has a different inner resource. Metta, that unconditional friendliness and goodwill towards oneself and all beings, like a life raft. It provides an inner buoyancy, a baseline of peace and security that is not dependent on external conditions. With this inner resilience, one can stand firmly on the riverbank, assess the situation with clarity, and skillfully throw a rope or extend a hand to the person in the water. They can engage with the suffering effectively because they are not drowning in it themselves. This is the essence of wise compassion. The suffering of the world is a vast and often turbulent ocean. To navigate it without the buoyant life raft of metta is to risk being pulled under by the first great wave of sorrow we encounter. Metta builds this resilient heart in several ways. First, the practice of loving kindness for oneself fills our own cup, ensuring that we are not trying to give from a place of scarcity. It establishes a secure home base of self-acceptance and inner peace that we can always return to after being exposed to the pain of others. Second, metta's universal nature helps us to witness suffering without becoming personally entangled in it in an unhealthy way. We see the pain, we feel it, but we understand it as part of the universal human condition rather than a personal attack or failure. This allows us to maintain a sense of perspective and strength. This combination of self-compassion and spaciousness transforms raw empathy, which can be mere emotional contagion, into true karuna. Raw empathy means, if you are anxious, I become anxious. If you are in despair, I fall into despair with you. Wise compassion, or karuna, is empathy plus the strength, wisdom, and loving intention to be of benefit. It is the courageous capacity to stay present with pain, offering our own stability and peace as a resource for healing. It is crucial to understand what wise compassion is and what it is not. As we've seen, it is not pity, which looks down from a place of superiority and creates distance. Nor is karuna simply sadness. While a compassionate response may certainly contain an element of sadness, it is not defined by it. Sadness can be a passive and self-referential state. Your suffering makes me feel sad. It can lead to a feeling of heavy helplessness. Karuna, by contrast, is active, energizing, and other-oriented. Your suffering motivates me to wish for your freedom from that suffering. It is the heart's powerful and resounding yes in the face of life's pain. It is a feeling not of weakness, but of immense, tender strength. This courageous quality of compassion is beautifully personified in the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who is revered throughout the Buddhist world. The legend tells that Avalokiteshvara made a powerful vow to listen to the cries of every suffering being in all realms of existence, and not to rest until every last one of them was liberated from their pain. As he began this noble work, he listened with his whole being, and the sheer, crushing weight of the world's anguish, the cries of fear, loss, rage, and despair became so overwhelming that his head literally shattered into 1,000 pieces. He was utterly broken by the pain he was witnessing. At that moment, the Buddha of infinite light, Amitabha, saw his plight and, out of his own great compassion, reassembled him. But he did not just put him back together as he was. He gave him 1,000 heads so that he could more effectively perceive the suffering in all directions, and 1,000 arms so that he could more skillfully reach out to offer aid. And, most importantly, in the palm of each of the 1,000 hands was an eye of wisdom. This powerful story contains a profound teaching. The shattering of the head symbolizes how a heart, when open to the world's pain without sufficient support and wisdom, can be destroyed by it. The 1,000 arms represent the boundless potential for compassionate action, the irrepressible urge to help that arises from a compassionate heart. But the 1,000 eyes of wisdom are the most crucial element. They signify that true, effective compassion must always be guided by wisdom. It cannot be blind. It must be intelligent, discerning, and skillful, acting in ways that truly alleviate suffering rather than inadvertently causing more harm. The cultivation of karuna, therefore, is a practice of both heart and mind. In our formal meditation, we can consciously develop this quality. The practice often begins by first filling ourselves with the warmth of metta, establishing that secure foundation. Then, we can bring to mind a person we know is suffering. It might be a friend going through a difficult illness, a family member experiencing a loss, or even ourselves in a moment of pain. We allow ourselves to gently and courageously connect with the reality of their suffering, not by dwelling on the dramatic details of the story, but by sensing the raw feeling of pain itself. As we feel a resonance in our own heart, we then shift the phrases of our intention from metta to karuna. We silently offer the wish, may you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May you find peace and healing. May you have the strength to meet this challenge. We let these wishes be a sincere, potent offering, a sending of strength, peace, and solace from our heart to theirs. Ultimately, true karuna does not remain on the meditation cushion. It is an active quality that naturally seeks expression in the world. The 1,000 arms of the Bodhisattva are a symbol of this impulse to act. Yet, compassionate action does not always mean grand, heroic gestures. More often, it manifests in the simple, profound acts of human connection. It can be the act of deep listening, offering a friend in distress the sacred healing space of our silent, non-judgmental presence without any need to fix their problem. It can be a simple, gentle word of encouragement offered to a colleague who is struggling. It can be a practical act of service, like preparing a meal for a new parent or making a donation to help those in need. The form of the action is less important than the quality of heart behind it. Guided by the wisdom we have learned, we act not from a place of egoic need to be a savior, but from a simple, humble desire to be of benefit, always respecting the strength and autonomy of the person we are helping. We learn that sometimes the most compassionate action is to simply stand by someone's side, trusting in their ability to find their own way through the darkness, while letting them know they are not alone. By building our foundation in Metta, we cultivate the courage and resilience to become a source of healing in a wounded world, proving that a tender heart and a strong heart need not be opposites. Indeed, the path of karuna is the way to realize they are one and the same. After learning to open our hearts to the boundless joy of others through mudita and to meet their pain with the courageous tenderness of karuna, a question of profound importance arises. How can a heart remain so radically open without being constantly thrown into turmoil? How can we navigate the turbulent ocean of human experiences, soaring triumphs, and its devastating tragedies without being endlessly tossed about, elated one moment and shattered the next? The path of the 4 divine abodes provides the answer in its fourth and culminating quality, the sublime state that holds and harmonizes all the others. Upekkha, the Pali word for equanimity. Upekkha is the most subtle, the most misunderstood, and yet the most profoundly peaceful of these 4 dwellings of the heart. It represents the masterful balance of a heart that has become both infinitely loving and unshakably serene. It is the crowning achievement of a love that has been tempered and purified by the fire of deep wisdom. The first and most critical step in understanding upekkha is to distinguish it from its insidious near enemy, indifference. In our everyday language, equanimity might be confused with a cool detachment, a stoic refusal to be affected, or a simple attitude of not caring. This is a complete misinterpretation. Indifference is a contraction of the heart. It is a defense mechanism born from fear, aversion, or emotional exhaustion. It builds a wall around the heart to protect itself from being hurt. It is a state of cold, lonely withdrawal. Upekkha, on the other hand, is the result of the heart's most radical expansion. It is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of a profound, all-encompassing love that has become so vast and so universal that it is no longer knocked off balance by the changing fortunes of the world. Indifference says, "I don't care about you." Upekkha says, "I care for you so deeply and so universally that my love does not waver, regardless of who you are or what you do." Upekkha is not a state to be cultivated in isolation, but the natural ripening that occurs when metta, karuna, and mudita are fully developed and infused with a clear seeing of the way things are. The root of our daily emotional turbulence lies in the constant, chattering activity of preference. Our minds are perpetual judging machines, endlessly sorting our experiences into 2 simple categories. I like this, I want more of it, and I don't like that. I want it to go away. We are addicted to pleasant feelings, praise, and success, and we are allergic to unpleasant feelings, blame, and failure. This relentless pushing and pulling, this constant struggle against the flow of reality, is the source of our deepest anxieties and frustrations. Upekkha is the state of mind that transcends this reactive binary. It is a loving, spacious acceptance of reality as it unfolds, moment by moment. This does not mean we become passive or resigned to injustice. It means we cease our internal war with what is. We stop arguing with reality. From this place of profound inner peace, our actions in the world become far more clear, effective, and wise. This state of profound balance arises as the other three divine abodes mature and merge. Through the practice of metta, we train the heart to extend goodwill to all beings, gradually erasing the line between friend and stranger. Through karuna, we open our hearts to the suffering of all beings, recognizing our shared vulnerability. Through mudita, we learn to rejoice in the happiness of all beings, seeing their joy as our own. As this feeling of all beings becomes less of a concept and more of a felt reality, the mind's habit of forming preferences begins to dissolve. The intense attachment we feel for a friend and the intense aversion we feel for an enemy both begin to soften into a more spacious and inclusive love. We see that the friend, the enemy, and the stranger are all, at their core, just like us, wanting happiness, fearing suffering, and navigating the complexities of life as best they can. When our love becomes this vast, it naturally becomes impartial. We care for the well-being of all, just as the sun shines on all without distinction. This is the birth of equanimity. The classic image for upekkha is that of a great mountain. Imagine a majestic mountain, its peaks reaching into the heavens, and its base rooted deep within the earth. It sits in profound stillness. In the spring, gentle breezes and warm rains caress its slopes, but the mountain is not carried away by pleasure. In the summer, the sun beats down with a fierce, burning intensity, but the mountain is not agitated. In the autumn, colored leaves dance upon it, and in the winter, fierce storms rage, covering it in snow and ice. The winds may howl, lightning may strike, and clouds may obscure its peaks, but the mountain itself remains utterly unmoved, solid, and serene. It experiences all the changing weather of the seasons without becoming the weather. A mind that dwells in upekkha is like this mountain. The inevitable weather patterns of human life, the winds of praise and blame, the heat of success and the cold of failure, the storms of loss and the sunshine of gain all come and go. The equanimous mind experiences them fully, but it is not shaken by them. Its peace is not contingent on fair weather. It finds its stability not in external conditions, but in the deep, silent, and unshakable nature of awareness itself. This profound stability is not just an emotional state. It is rooted in deep wisdom, particularly the understanding of impermanence, anicca, and the law of cause and effect, or karma. Upekkha is the heart's full embodiment of accepting impermanence, because we know, not just intellectually but in our bones, that all experiences are fleeting. We cease our frantic efforts to cling to the pleasant and push away the unpleasant. We learn to allow experiences, feelings, and even people to flow through our lives with an open hand, appreciating their presence without desperately trying to prevent their departure. This creates an incredible sense of inner spaciousness and freedom. We are no longer at the mercy of our next mood swing or the next piece of good or bad news. Furthermore, upekkha is grounded in a wise understanding of karma. It recognizes that all beings, including ourselves, are the heirs to their own actions. While we can and should offer our love, support, and help, we cannot ultimately control another person's journey. We cannot make their choices for them, nor can we shield them from the consequences of those choices. This understanding is not a cold detachment. It is an act of profound respect for the autonomy of others. It frees us from the arrogant and exhausting burden of the savior, complex the belief that we know what's best for everyone and that it is our job to manage their lives. We learn to offer our help freely and then let go, trusting in the other person's own capacity to find their way. This allows us to help more people more effectively because we are not depleted by anxious attachment to the outcomes of our help. It is the wisdom of a skilled gardener who knows they can provide the best soil, water, and sunlight, but they cannot force the seed to grow. This state of unshakable peace is best understood as the mind that has been freed from the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions arranged in 4 pairs of opposites that keep the ordinary, unenlightened mind in a constant state of turmoil. They are pleasure and its opposite, pain, gain and its opposite, loss, fame and its opposite, disgrace and praise and its opposite, blame. The ordinary mind is like a leaf, helplessly blown about by these winds. When we experience gain, praise, fame, or pleasure, we are elated. When we experience loss, blame, disgrace, or pain, we are devastated. Our happiness is entirely conditional, completely dependent on getting the favorable winds and avoiding the unfavorable ones. A mind dwelling in upekkha is like the deeply rooted tree, not the fluttering leaf. It feels the winds, it acknowledges their presence, but it is not uprooted by them. Its peace comes not from manipulating the world to get what it wants, but from the unconditional stability of its own nature. How, then, do we practice this sublime state? Formal upekkha meditation often begins after we have cultivated the other 3 Brahmaviharas. We might start by bringing to mind a person for whom it is easy to feel equanimity, someone we feel neither strong liking nor disliking for. We then reflect on the impartial nature of reality using a classic contemplation phrase. This person, like all beings, is the owner of their own karma. Their happiness and their suffering arise from their own actions, not from my wishes for them. This phrase is not a cold dismissal. It is a powerful tool for cutting through our own ego's desire to control and interfere. It fosters a deep sense of peace and respect. We then slowly extend this reflection outward to ourselves, to our loved ones, and even to our enemies, seeing that we are all equally subject to the laws of cause and effect. We are all living with the results of our past actions and creating our future with our present ones. This realization levels the playing field of the heart, dissolving the sharp lines of preference and prejudice. The ultimate wish of upekkha becomes a wish for wisdom for all. May you find the wisdom to create the causes for your own true happiness. May I find that same wisdom. Upekkha, then, is the magnificent culmination of our practice, the quality that ensures our love is not only boundless, but also wise. It is the serene confidence of a heart that has found a peace that cannot be shaken by the ever-changing tides of life. It is the discovery that our true home is not in the achievement of any external state, but in the spacious, loving, and peaceful nature of awareness itself. Like the great mountain, a heart established in equanimity becomes a silent, steady beacon of strength and peace for a turbulent world, offering its shelter to all, in all seasons, without condition and without wavering. Having established a deep inner foundation of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the unshakable peace of equanimity, the practice now calls us to a formidable, yet profoundly rewarding challenge. We must learn to carry these sublime qualities from the quiet sanctuary of our meditation practice into the bustling, complex, and often fraught territory of our professional lives. The modern workplace, for many of us, is where we spend the majority of our waking hours. It is a place of immense potential where we can contribute our talents and collaborate on meaningful projects. Yet, it is also frequently an arena of high stress, intense competition, clashing egos, and a pervasive anxiety that can seep into every other area of our lives. A common assumption prevails in this environment that to be successful, one must be ruthless, aggressive, and relentlessly self-interested, that kindness is a form of weakness, and compassion is a luxury one cannot afford. We will discover, however, that this is a deeply flawed and unsustainable myth. Far from being a naive or idealistic approach, bringing the practice of metta into the marketplace is a radical act of wisdom. It is a form of soft power that can transform not only our own well-being and effectiveness, but the very culture of the world in which we work. At the heart of much workplace stress and conflict lies the unspoken paradigm of the zero-sum game. This is the pervasive scarcity mindset that views success as a limited resource. It's the belief that there is only one promotion available, a finite budget to be divided, or a limited amount of recognition to be won. From this perspective, a colleague's success is a direct threat to our own. Their gain is our loss. This mindset is the breeding ground for all the toxic elements of corporate life, office politics, the hoarding of information, the formation of cliques, backstabbing, and a chronic, low-level mistrust that poisons collaboration and stifles creativity. People work in protective silos, afraid to share ideas for fear they will be stolen, and afraid to admit mistakes for fear they will be blamed. This environment is not only deeply unpleasant, it is profoundly inefficient and inhibits the very innovation it purports to value. To illustrate the alternative, consider the tale of two teams of builders, both tasked with constructing a great hall. The first team operates on the principles of competition and scarcity. Each builder jealously guards their best tools, hiding their most effective techniques from the others. They see each other as rivals for the foreman's praise. If one builder makes an error, the others secretly rejoice, as it makes their own work look superior. Communication is minimal and guarded. They work in a state of constant tension and suspicion. In the end, they manage to construct a hall, but it is filled with hidden flaws, a direct reflection of the discord and lack of cohesion in its creation. The second team, however, operates from a place of shared purpose, a place of metta. They see the construction of the hall as a collective endeavor. They pool their tools and share their knowledge freely. The most experienced carpenter teaches her shortcuts to the apprentices. When a mason lays a crooked stone, the others do not mock him. They rally to help him correct it, understanding that the integrity of the whole structure depends on the quality of each part. They communicate openly, celebrate each other's skilled work, and support each other through challenges. The atmosphere is one of trust, psychological safety, and creative synergy. The hall they build is not only structurally superior and more beautiful than the first, but the very process of building it was a source of nourishment, pride, and genuine connection for everyone involved. This parable is a direct map for transforming our professional lives. By consciously cultivating metta for our colleagues, we begin to shift the entire paradigm from me versus you to us. We start to see their success as integral to our own, fostering an environment where everyone can thrive. This inner shift from competition to compassion provides us with the skillful means to navigate the most difficult workplace scenarios. Let us consider the common challenge of a difficult colleague or boss. Perhaps you have a manager who micromanages every detail, demonstrating a clear lack of trust. The habitual egoic reaction is one of frustration, resentment, and complaint. A mind trained in metta, however, has another option. While acknowledging the frustration, it can look deeper and see the fear behind the controlling behavior. The practice becomes a silent, inner offering. May you be free from your anxiety. May you feel safe. May you learn to trust your team. This does not mean you passively accept the behavior. It means you have now calmed the reactive poison in your own mind, allowing you to address the situation from a place of clarity and calm, rather than from a place of emotional turmoil. You can then speak to your manager about your need for autonomy in a way that is constructive, respectful, and far more likely to be heard. The same principle applies to a colleague who may be undermining you or taking credit for your work. The instinct is to harbor resentment and plot a counterattack. The practice of metta invites us to first look at the insecurity that must be driving their behavior. We can silently wish them well. May you be free from your insecurity. May you find a sense of self-worth that does not depend on diminishing others. Again, this is not for their benefit, but for ours. It is an act of radical self-care that frees us from the exhausting burden of carrying around hatred and resentment. From this place of inner peace, we can then take wise and firm action. This is where the quality of upekkha, or equanimity, becomes essential. Metta does not mean we become a doormat. True compassion for ourselves and for the health of the team may require us to set clear and firm boundaries. We can learn to say no to an unreasonable request. We can document and address unprofessional behavior through the proper channels. The difference is that these actions are no longer driven by reactive anger, but by a calm, centered, and protective wisdom. We are not attacking the person. We are addressing the behavior. We are protecting the integrity of our work and our own well-being with a kindness that is both gentle and unshakably firm. This practice also revolutionizes our ability to receive feedback and criticism. For most of us, unsolicited criticism feels like a personal attack. The ego immediately throws up its defenses, and we become incapable of hearing any potential truth in what is being said. When faced with criticism, a practitioner can immediately turn metta inward. May I be safe with this feeling of being judged. May I be at peace. This creates a small internal buffer, a moment of spaciousness between the stimulus and our reaction. In that space, we can listen to the feedback with a more open mind. Is there some truth here? Is this an opportunity for me to learn and grow? Even if the feedback is delivered unskillfully, we can learn to separate the message from the delivery, extracting what is useful and discarding what is not. The practice transforms criticism from a threat to our ego into potential data for our growth. Beyond navigating difficulties, the integration of metta into our work can address one of the most profound ailments of the modern professional, a pervasive sense of meaninglessness. For so many, work becomes a soulless rat race, a monotonous exchange of our precious life hours for a paycheck, leading to burnout, cynicism, and despair. The practice of metta allows us to re-enchant our work, to infuse it with a sense of deeper purpose, regardless of the task itself. We can begin to view our workday not as a grind to be endured, but as a vast and fertile field for spiritual practice. Every repetitive, boring task becomes an opportunity to cultivate patience and presence. Every interaction with a colleague becomes a chance to practice listening and kindness. Every success becomes a moment to practice mudita, and every setback becomes a moment to practice karuna for ourselves and upekkha with the uncontrollable outcome. We can learn to adopt the mindset of the wise cobbler, who infused every shoe he mended with a prayer for the well-being of its wearer. A software developer can write code not just to complete a task, but with the genuine intention that this software will be helpful and bring a sense of ease to the people who use it. A barista can serve coffee not just as a transaction, but with the quiet intention that this small act of service might bring a moment of warmth and pleasure to someone's day. A manager can conduct a meeting not just to disseminate information, but with the intention of creating an environment where every voice feels heard and valued. This infusion of positive intention, this dedication of our effort to the well-being of others, transforms the most mundane job into a sacred and meaningful offering. It connects our small daily efforts to the vast, interdependent web of life. We realize that our work, no matter how humble it may seem, is our unique contribution to society. By performing it with diligence, integrity, and a kind heart, we are adding a strong and positive thread to that great tapestry. This provides a profound and durable sense of purpose that no job title or salary could ever hope to provide. Our desk, our workshop, Our vehicle, these, become our modern-day monasteries, the places where we practice being the person we truly wish to be. By bringing the ancient wisdom of the heart into the modern marketplace, we discover we have the power not only to transform our own lives, but to become a quiet, steady, and powerful force for creating a kinder and more compassionate world. As we learn to infuse our daily work with the meaning and connection that Metta provides, we naturally begin to question our relationship with the fruits of that work, the money, the status, and the material possessions they can buy. From the moment we are born, our culture relentlessly bombards us with a single, powerful, and deeply misleading message: that our happiness is for sale and our self-worth can be measured by what we own. This is the pervasive doctrine of modern materialism, a belief system that promises fulfillment through acquisition, but so often delivers only a fleeting thrill followed by a deeper sense of emptiness. It is a source of immense personal anxiety, societal competition, and devastating environmental consequences. This endless cycle of craving and consumption is perfectly described in Buddhist cosmology by the image of the hungry ghoster being with a tiny, constricted throat and a vast, cavernous stomach, forever consuming, but never, ever feeling full. We will now explore how the steady, gentle practice of metta provides a profound and lasting antidote to this condition, healing the inner wounds that fuel our endless and exhausting search for happiness in things. To heal this affliction, we must first correctly diagnose its root cause. Materialism is not, at its core, a problem of greed. It is a problem of pain. The frantic desire for a bigger house, a faster car, the latest phone, more fashionable clothes arises from a deep, often unconscious, feeling of inner lack. It is a sense of inadequacy, of insecurity, a feeling that we are not quite enough as we are. We feel a hole at the center of our being, an inner void, and consumer culture, brilliantly and seductively, promises to fill that void for us. An advertisement for a luxury car is not just selling transportation, it is selling an image of power, freedom, and high status. A commercial for a new smartphone is not just selling a communication device. It is selling the promise of connection, popularity, and belonging. The fashion industry does not just sell clothing, it sells desirability, confidence, and a ticket to the inner circle. We are offered these external things as solutions to our deepest internal anxieties. The tragedy is that this promise is always a false one. The thrill of a new purchase provides a temporary high, a fleeting distraction from our inner discomfort. But this high quickly fades, and our baseline level of happiness returns to precisely where it was before, if not slightly lower, now perhaps accompanied by the stress of a new credit card bill. This phenomenon is known in psychology as the hedonic treadmill. We experience a brief spike in happiness, quickly adapt to our new circumstance, and then require a newer, bigger, or better thing to get the same fleeting rush. We are running faster and faster, accumulating more and more, yet emotionally, we remain in exactly the same place. This is the very definition of the hungry ghost's curse, an endless cycle of craving, temporary satisfaction, and renewed craving that leaves us exhausted, unfulfilled, and perpetually seeking the next fix. The practice of metta offers a way to step off this treadmill entirely, not by rejecting the material world, but by healing the inner wound that drives our desperate consumption of it. Metta provides the cure because it directly cultivates, from within, the very qualities we have been mistakenly trying to buy from without. The entire project of materialism is an attempt to acquire feelings of safety, happiness, and worth from external objects. The practice of metta is the process of learning to generate these wholesome states from our own internal resources, which are infinite and free. We seek a sense of security by owning a larger home or accumulating more money in the bank. The practice of metta, through the simple phrase, "May I be safe," cultivates a portable, and unconditional sense of inner safety, a feeling of being at home in our own skin that is not dependent on a particular building or bank balance. We seek a feeling of happiness by purchasing an exciting vacation, a new entertainment system, or a gourmet meal. The practice of metta, with the wish, "May I be happy," trains the heart to access a quiet, reliable, and sustainable well-being that is not contingent on any external pleasure. We seek a sense of self-worth by wearing designer labels or driving a prestigious car, hoping that the admiration of others will convince us of our own value. The practice of loving kindness for ourselves cultivates a fundamental and unconditional self-acceptance, a deep knowing that our worth is inherent and not for sale at any price. As we become more adept at generating these states of safety, happiness, and self-worth from within, the frantic, desperate need to seek them outside of ourselves naturally begins to wither. The inner void, the hungry ghost's empty stomach, is finally being fed, not with the empty calories of material things, but with the rich, nourishing protein of self-love and inner peace. Our relationship with the material world begins to radically transform. We are no longer slaves to our desires. This does not mean we are required to live a life of stark asceticism. It simply means we can now enjoy material things for their beauty, their utility, or the simple pleasure they bring, without burdening them with the impossible task of making us whole. We can appreciate a comfortable home without needing it to define our identity. We can enjoy a delicious meal without it needing to be the highlight of our week. We are freed to enjoy the world without clinging to it, and this is the beginning of true contentment. This inner transformation also has a profound effect on our outward behavior as consumers. A heart filled with metta and its companion, karuna or compassion, naturally begins to expand its circle of care. As our frantic self-obsession diminishes, we have more bandwidth to consider the wider implications of our choices. We begin to think not just, "What will this product do for me?" but also, "What was the cost of this product to others?" This leads to a natural development of mindful consumption. When we pick up a piece of clothing, we might begin to wonder about the person who sewed it. We can send them a silent wish: "May you be safe. May you have fair working conditions. May you be free from exploitation." When we buy our food, we might think of the farmers who grew it and the land it came from, wishing for the health of both. We might consider the environmental impact of our purchases, feeling a sense of compassion or karuna for the planet and all the non-human beings who share our home. We start to see that there is no such thing as a truly separate purchase. Every transaction connects us to a vast, invisible web of other people, animals, and ecosystems. This awareness naturally guides us toward more ethical, sustainable, and conscious choices. The profound difference between material wealth and inner peace is perfectly captured in the ancient story of the anxious king and the peaceful monk. The king lived in a magnificent palace, adorned with gold and precious jewels. He slept on silks, was served the most exquisite foods by a legion of servants, and possessed more riches than anyone in the land. Yet, he was a man tormented. He could not sleep, plagued by worries about his kingdom, by fear of his enemies, and by the constant anxiety that he might lose his vast wealth. His life, for all its external splendor, was a prison of fear. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered out of his palace and into the forest, where he came upon a monk sitting in serene meditation beneath a tree. The monk owned nothing but the simple, patched robe on his back and a clay bowl for begging. Yet, his face was radiant with a deep, unshakable peace that the king had never seen before. The king, in his desperation, asked the monk, "You have nothing, yet you seem to have everything." "I have everything, yet I feel I have nothing. What is your secret?" The monk smiled and replied, "Your Majesty, your wealth requires you to guard it. My wealth is that I have nothing to guard. You seek happiness by adding more things. I find happiness by letting go of the need for more things. True wealth is not measured by what you have, but by how little you need to be truly happy. This story invites us to a radical redefinition of wealth. Our culture teaches us that wealth is the accumulation of assets. This ancient wisdom teaches us that true wealth is the liberation from craving. It is the richness of a mind at peace, the abundance of a heart full of love, the security of our connection to others, and the freedom of wanting nothing more than what is present in this moment. The practice of metta is the most direct path to discovering this inexhaustible inner treasure. It heals the wound of materialism at its source by filling the inner emptiness that drives our consumption. It liberates us from the exhausting and ultimately fruitless pursuit of happiness in things, and guides us toward a life of profound contentment, ethical clarity, and true, enduring wealth. It is the gentle path that leads us from a life of frantic seeking to one of quiet, joyful being. As the practice of metta begins to heal our personal relationship with the material world, liberating us from the insatiable hunger for things, our expanding awareness naturally turns its gaze outward. We look upon a world that seems increasingly fractured, a global landscape carved into deep, bitter trenches of ideological warfare. We see political polarization, social strife, and a rising tide of anger that is amplified and accelerated by the technologies we hold in our own hands. Faced with this vast and complex tapestry of conflict, it is easy to feel overwhelmed, powerless, and to retreat into a state of cynical despair. The problems seem too enormous, too systemic, for the quiet, internal state of one person's heart to possibly make a difference. But the path of awakening does not allow for retreat. It challenges us to bring our practice to the most difficult territory of all, the deep, painful divides that separate us as a human family. We must therefore ask the great question: can the simple, patient cultivation of loving kindness truly change a world so full of hatred and division? The Buddhist answer is a quiet, radical, and resounding yes. It asserts that the only lasting change must begin within, because the us versus them mentality that fuels global conflict is merely a massive projection of the me versus you conflict that is generated by the individual human ego. The most potent political action any of us can ever take, therefore, is the courageous inner work of dismantling that fundamental division in our own hearts. To understand the solution, we must first dissect the psychology of the problem. Human beings have a deep, instinctual need for identity and belonging. The ego, our sense of a separate self, seeks security by latching onto groups. Our fragile sense of I becomes fused with a larger, more powerful sense of we. We are our nation, our political party, our religion, our favorite sports team, our social cause. This provides a sense of safety and meaning. But the ego's mechanism for strengthening an in-group identity is nearly always through the demonization of an out-group. A sense of us is most powerfully defined by its opposition to a sense of them. The more threatening, immoral, or foolish we can make the other side appear, the more righteous, noble, and cohesive our own tribe feels. The ego thrives on this dynamic of comparison and condemnation. It is a primitive survival strategy that, in our interconnected modern world, has become catastrophic. This ancient tribalistic tendency is now amplified and weaponized by our modern media landscape. Partisan news outlets and social media algorithms are not designed to inform or to foster understanding. They are designed to maximize engagement. And the most engaging emotions are outrage and fear. These systems learn our biases and proceed to feed us a steady diet of content that confirms our existing beliefs and presents the most extreme, outrageous, and terrifying caricatures of the other side. We are placed into digital echo chambers where our own views are endlessly validated and the views of others are presented as monstrous and incomprehensible. The tragic result is a progressive dehumanization, We cease to see the people on the other side of the political aisle as complex human beings. We no longer see them as fellow citizens who, like us, love their children, fear for the future, and are trying to do what they believe is right based on their own life experiences and information sources. Instead, they become a monolithic entity, a dangerous caricature to be feared and hated, the liberal snowflake, the fascist deplorable, the coastal elite, the ignorant rural. Once a group of people has been successfully dehumanized in our minds, any form of cruelty, contempt, or violence against them can be justified. We have laid the psychological groundwork for war. Into this maelstrom of collective anger and division, the practice of metta enters as a silent, personal, and profoundly revolutionary act. In a world that profits from our hatred, that relentlessly encourages our fear and our judgment, the simple, private, conscious choice to cultivate a feeling of goodwill for someone on the other side is an act of profound spiritual and political insurrection. It is a refusal to participate in the lucrative business of dehumanization. It is a declaration of independence from the outrage machine. This practice is perhaps the most challenging application of metta, and it must be approached with great care and wisdom. It begins not with the other person, but with ourselves. When you think of a political figure or a group whose views you find dangerous or repugnant, the first step is to notice the immediate reaction in your own body and mind. Notice the surge of anger, the tightening of fear, the sneer of contempt. The practice, at this stage, is to hold your own difficult feelings with compassion. You offer metta to yourself. May I be safe with this intense anger. May I be at peace with this fear. May my heart be free from the poison of hatred. This crucial first step prevents the practice from becoming a form of spiritual bypassing, where we pretend we are not feeling what we are feeling. Only after we have tended to our own inner fire can we begin the courageous work of looking at the other. This does not mean we condone their actions or agree with their views. It means we make a conscious effort to look past the political labels and see the fallible, complex human being underneath. We can reflect that this person too was once an innocent child. This person has people that they love fiercely. This person is motivated by their own fears, many of which may be surprisingly similar to our own, even if they lead to vastly different conclusions. From this place of shared humanity, we can then attempt to offer a single, tiny sliver of metta. It may not be a full-throated, "May you be happy," but perhaps we can manage a sincere, "Beneath all of our disagreements, may you be free from your own inner suffering. May you be free from fear and anger. May you find true wisdom." This practice is not undertaken for their sake. We do it for our own sake, to liberate ourselves from the self-inflicted torment of carrying hatred in our hearts. This inner practice of rehumanization naturally transforms our outer engagement. When we encounter someone with opposing views, our habitual goal is to debate, to win, to prove them wrong. Our listening is aggressive, aimed only at finding the flaws in their argument so we can launch our counterattack. A metta-based approach changes the goal entirely. The goal is no longer to win, but to understand. We learn to listen with a gentle curiosity, asking ourselves, what is the underlying fear that is motivating this person's belief? What is the core value they are trying to protect? What experiences have they had in their life that have led them to this conclusion? This does not mean we will ultimately agree with them, but it entirely transforms the nature of the encounter. A battle between two ideologies becomes a meeting between two human beings. And in that space of mutual, if disagreeing, respect, the possibility of genuine communication and connection can arise. It is easy to feel that such small, personal acts are insignificant in the face of massive, systemic problems. But this is to misunderstand the nature of change. Imagine a vast concert hall, plunged into total darkness. One person, sitting alone, can curse the darkness for a lifetime and it will not change a thing. But if that one person has the courage to strike a single match, to light a single small candle, the space immediately around them is filled with light. Others, seeing this small, brave flame in the oppressive darkness, can then take heart and come forward to light their own candles from that original flame. And so it spreads, from one to another, a ripple of light, until the entire hall is illuminated. Our own commitment to inner peace, to compassionate dialogue, is that first, single lamp. When we refuse to participate in the cycle of outrage, when we answer an angry comment with a calm question, when we choose understanding over condemnation at our own family dinner table, we are lighting our candle. We are creating a small pocket of sanity and warmth in a world that is cold and crazed with anger. This has a ripple effect that we can never truly measure. Throughout history, the greatest and most lasting social changes have been fueled not by hatred, but by a profound love for humanity. The civil rights movement in the United States, under leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was explicitly rooted in the Christian principle of loving one's enemy, a direct parallel to the practice of Metta. In 1963, during a time of intense conflict and religious persecution in Vietnam, a Buddhist monk named Thich Quang Duc performed an ultimate act of compassion. To call the world's attention to the immense suffering of his people and to plead for an end to the violence, he calmly and deliberately self-immolated in a busy Saigon intersection. His act, witnessed and photographed by horrified journalists, was not one of anger or despair, but one of profound karuna. It was the offering of his own body, the ultimate sacrifice, made in a desperate attempt to awaken the hearts of his fellow human beings and stop the killing. We do not look to such an extreme act to emulate it, but to understand the incredible power that a single, committed heart can wield. It is a testament to the fact that the deepest wellspring of courageous action is not hatred for what is wrong, but an unshakable love for what is possible. A mind grounded in these practices does not become passive. It becomes more, not less, engaged. But its engagement is different. It is an activism motivated by love, not by hate. It is an activism that can advocate without demonizing, protest without rage, and endure setbacks without falling into despair. It is sustainable because the fuel of love is infinite, while the fuel of anger eventually burns itself out, consuming the activist along with it. We stand at a critical moment in history, armed with technologies of connection that are being used to drive us apart. The practice of Metta offers a path forward. It is the conscious, daily work of healing the great divide in the only place we have any real power, within our own hearts and minds. We may feel that our personal practice is a small, insignificant thing in the face of global conflict, but it is the only true place to begin. The outer world is a mirror of our collective inner state. A world filled with individuals at war with themselves will inevitably be a world at war. A world where more and more individuals cultivate inner peace will, by necessity, become a more peaceful world. By committing to this deep internal work, we light our own small lamp in the darkness. We become an island of sanity, a source of warmth, and in doing so, we offer the most precious and powerful gift we can possibly give to a world tearing itself apart. Having journeyed from the quiet interior landscape of our own hearts to our most intimate relationships, and all the way out to the great social and political challenges of our time, we now return home. We have seen how the steady, patient cultivation of loving kindness can be a powerful medicine for the anxious mind, a balm for the wounded relationship, a source of meaning in our work, and even a revolutionary force in a divided world. But a medicine is only effective if it is taken, and a tool is only useful if it is picked up and used, not just once as a novelty, but daily, with the gentle discipline of a musician practicing their scales. The final and most essential stage of our exploration, therefore, is the most practical and personal one. How do we transform this practice of metta from an interesting idea or a temporary technique into a faithful, unconditional, and lifelong companion? How do we ensure that loving kindness becomes not just something we do, but, over time, the very person we are? The first and most important understanding we must cultivate is that metta is a path, not a destination. In our goal-oriented culture, we are conditioned to think in terms of achievement and perfection. We imagine there will be some future, magical day when we have arrived, a day when we are permanently free from anger, completely immune to fear, and overflowing with boundless love for every being at every moment. This is a fantasy, and clinging to it is the surest path to disillusionment. The reality of a long-term contemplative practice is one of constant ebb and flow, just like life itself. There will be days, or even weeks, when the practice feels effortless and joyful. Your heart will feel open and spacious. The phrases of metta will flow with a genuine warmth, and you will feel a deep sense of connection to yourself and the world. These are moments to be cherished, but not clung to. There will also be days when the practice feels like a chore. Your mind will be restless and distracted. Your heart will feel like a cold, hard stone, and the phrases will sound like empty, mechanical repetitions. There will be days when you are tired, stressed, or sick, and you forget to practice altogether. It is in these difficult moments that the true meaning of commitment is forged. Our progress on this path is not measured by the quality of our best meditation session, but by our gentle, non-judgmental willingness to return to the practice again and again, especially after we have strayed. The most important practice session is often the very next one after a period of neglect. The real virtue is not perfection. It is a patient, dogged perseverance. Imagine your heart is a magnificent musical instrument, like a cello. Some days, due to the right conditions, the right humidity, a state of relaxationit will produce a sound that is rich, resonant, and deeply moving. On other days, due to stress, lack of sleep, or emotional turmoil, the instrument may sound scratchy and out of tune. A dedicated musician does not smash their cello on the days it sounds poor. They do not conclude that they are a terrible musician or that the instrument is worthless. They understand that this is simply the nature of things. They continue to practice with patience, tuning the strings, working with the bow, trusting that the clear, beautiful tone is still inherent within the instrument and will, in time, reveal itself again. Our practice is just like this. Our job is not to force a beautiful sound every single time, but to simply keep showing up, to keep picking up the instrument of our heart with gentle, loving hands, day after day. To make this lifelong companionship a reality, we must learn to skillfully weave the thread of metta into the entire fabric of our day, moving beyond the confines of the formal sitting practice. While a dedicated period of formal meditation, even just for 5 or 10 minutes each day, is the essential anchor of our practice, the time when we specifically strengthen the metta muscle, the true aim is to let this quality infuse our every waking moment. We can do this by creating a web of gentle reminders, transforming moments of dead time or stress into opportunities for practice. We can begin the day, before even getting out of bed, by taking a few quiet breaths and offering the first gift of the morning to ourselves. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I meet this day with courage and an open heart. We can practice with what is sometimes called found time. These are the countless moments throughout the day that are typically lost to impatience or distraction. While waiting in a long line at the grocery store, instead of pulling out your phone to scroll mindlessly, you can secretly practice metta for the tired-looking cashier, for the other people in line, and for yourself. While stuck in a traffic jam, instead of tensing up with frustration, you can use the time to fill your car with a silent, radiant wish. May all of us in this traffic reach our destinations safely. May we all be free from stress. We can also use transitions as a trigger for practice. The moment you hang up the phone after a difficult conversation, take one conscious breath and offer yourself a phrase of metta to clear the residue of the interaction. The moment you arrive home and put your key in the door, pause for a single second and set the intention to enter your home with a peaceful heart. And finally, we can end our day with metta. As you lie in bed, instead of letting the mind race with the worries of tomorrow or the regrets of today, you can gently review the day's events with a kind and forgiving attention. You can offer metta to yourself for your efforts and your shortcomings, and extend it to all the people you interacted with, wrapping the entire day in a blanket of unconditional goodwill. By seeding our day with these micro-doses of metta, the practice ceases to be a separate, isolated activity and becomes a continuous, living presence in our lives. When we commit to this path over the course of months and years, a slow, deep, and beautiful transformation begins to unfold. As metta becomes our heart's default setting, our very presence in the world changes. We become, often without any conscious effort, a source of peace and safety for those around us. Our friends, family, and colleagues may notice that they feel calmer in our company, that they can be more themselves without fear of judgment. Because we have learned to be a refuge for ourselves, we naturally become a refuge for others. Our life itself, in its simple, moment-to-moment unfolding, becomes an offering of kindness to the world. We become less of a drain on the world's limited resources of patience and goodwill, and more of a contributor to them. There is a timeless story that perfectly captures the essence of this lifelong journey. A student approaches a great master sculptor and asks, "How were you able to create this magnificent, lifelike statue of a Buddha from that rough, shapeless block of marble? It seems like a miracle." The master sculptor smiles and replies, "There was no miracle. The statue of the Buddha was already there inside the marble from the very beginning. It was there before I ever picked up a chisel. My job was not to create the Buddha. My job was simply to see the Buddha within the stone, and then, with great patience and care, to chip away everything that was not the Buddha." This profound parable is a perfect metaphor for our own spiritual practice, our own awakened heart, our boundless capacity for loving kindness. Our own Buddha nature is not something we have to build from scratch. It is not something we have to import from the outside. It is, and always has been, already present within us, buried beneath the rough, unworked stone of our own conditioning. The practices of mindfulness, of compassion, of metta are the tools, the chisel, and the mallet that we use in this patient, loving, and lifelong work of sculpture. With every moment of mindful awareness, with every gentle repetition of a metta phrase, we are chipping away at the stone of our own fear, our greed, our resentment, our judgment, and our confusion. We are not trying to become someone new, someone better, someone different from who we are. We are simply, courageously, and lovingly uncovering the magnificent, radiant truth of who we have been all along. And so, we arrive at the end of this exploration, but at the true beginning of our own journey. We began by acknowledging the quiet hum of anxiety and disconnection that pervades so much of modern life. We have traveled through the inner world of the self, learned to open the heart to others, faced the great truths of existence, and seen how a practice of kindness can reshape our minds, our bodies, and our world. The final truth is the simplest of all. Peace is not a destination to be reached. It is a path to be walked. Love is not a feeling to be found. It is a capacity to be cultivated. And this path, this cultivation, does not begin tomorrow, or after you have read one more book, or after you have perfected your understanding. The journey of 1,000 miles, as the sages say, begins with a single step, and that step can be taken right here, right now. Wherever you are, in this very moment, simply allow yourself to take one conscious breath. Feel the air enter your body and feel it leave. And with that one breath, offer your own heart one simple, gentle, and unconditional wish. May I be well. That is all. That is the beginning. That is the practice. That is the entire path, contained in a single moment. Welcome home. Our journey together began in a quiet room, with the familiar feeling of a long day's weight settling upon our shoulders. We began with the quiet hum of anxiety, the feeling of being disconnected, of seeking a lasting peace in a world that offers only fleeting pleasures. From that place of inner poverty, we embarked on a quiet exploration, following an ancient path of the heart. We learned to turn our attention inward, not with criticism, but with the gentle, unconditional friendship of Metta. We dared to offer this kindness to ourselves, to the neglected soil of our own being, and felt the first shoots of self-acceptance begin to grow. From that foundation, we let our goodwill overflow, first to our loved ones, then to the neutral stranger, and finally, in an act of profound courage, even to those we considered our enemies. We saw how this simple practice of wishing well could be a powerful medicine, healing the wounds of envy, calming the fires of anger, and transforming our relationship with our work, our possessions, and our divided world. We discovered that this path was not just a beautiful philosophy, but a biological reality, capable of rewiring our very brains for happiness and peace. The great discovery of this journey, the truth that lies at the heart of all these practices, is a simple one. The peace we so desperately seek in the world is not a destination to be found, but a quality to be cultivated. We have been taught to look for happiness outside of ourselves in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next purchase. We have behaved like thirsty people digging for water in a desert, when all along, a fresh, inexhaustible spring lay deep within us. Metta is the name of that spring. It is the tool we use to dig the well. This path teaches us that happiness is not something to be pursued and captured. It is the natural fragrance of a heart that is at peace with itself and in love with the world. It is not an acquisition, but a radiation. And so, we end where we began, but everything has changed. You have heard the words, you have understood the concepts, and now all that is left is the gentle, lifelong path of practice. You do not need to wait for the world to become a kinder place. You do not need anyone else's permission to begin your own journey toward inner peace. The most powerful tool for transformation you will ever possess is your own heart and your own intention. The journey does not begin tomorrow, after you have read another book or listened to another talk. The journey begins now, in this very moment. Right where you are, simply allow yourself to take one conscious breath. Feel the air enter your body and feel it leave. And with that one breath, with the full, quiet sincerity of your heart, offer this simple, powerful, and life-altering wish to yourself and to all of existence. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace.